The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
Valley, hooey Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good, where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast, Damn You Hollywood. And here's your host. Since he was born, they couldn't hold him down. He was another misfit kid in another burned out town. Robert Winfree never played by the rules. He never really cared. His nasty reputation took him everywhere. He looked and he saw that it wasn't only him. So many others have stood where he stood. He is the young, so raise your hand. They call him the problem child. He spends his life on trial. He walks an endless mile. He is the youth gone wild. He stands and won't fall. He's one and for all. The writing's on the wall. He is the youth gone wild. Robert Winfree! Yay!
Much as I appreciate his good Skid Row reference, I have a rule, Mark.
What is your rule, Robert Winfree, the youth gone wild?
No, you can't call me that.
I can't call you the youth gone wild?
Nope.
Robert Winfree?
You see, once you hit...
bitch?
No.
Let's keep going.
Don't worry about it. Look, the rule is once you hit 33, you can no longer have young, new, next, or whatever as a nickname attached to you.
All right, let me do the intro again. How about this?
No.
Robert was a young boy. He had a heart of stone. Huh?
One more of those, Mark, and I'm muting you.
Yeah, fuck off.
Hey, Mark, listen, I will take.
You're gonna get us copyright stricken.
I'll take any young, new, whatever you want to call me like that.
I love you, Ronnie Adams. Never change.
Because once you hit 40, you want to hear that stuff.
Look, my rule exists for two very specific reasons. Because there was nothing sadder than 40-year-old Uriah Faber out there being the California kid.
All right.
No, you're the middle-aged business owner.
Now that I've introed you lovingly, as I often do, caressing your balls for everyone, go ahead and actually intro the show. We have guests. Yeah. We have panel members. We have shit to do.
We do. And I'd appreciate it if you not reference my anatomy.
We'll see. It's going to be a long show.
It's getting there. You're punchy already, and we haven't even introduced Ronnie. All right. Tonight, everyone, we are talking about... Tonight, we are talking about the Dungeons & Dragons movie, also known as Wizards. Going, please, we have to remonetize this IP. It's called Honor Among Thieves, and we have a couple of guests. First up, as usual, mostly usual, she's graduated from special guest appearance to mostly series regular, so there are contractual limits in place to how many times she has to be on the show.
She's my VP of Animation.
VP of Animation and host of TV Party Tonight.
That's right.
Alexis Haina is with us.
Give her her flowers.
How you doing, Alexis?
No, seriously, where are my flowers?
Ask Mark. He's the one.
They're in my shorts. Come and get them, Toots.
I keep telling you that's not how you respond to stuff like that, Vince. Sorry, that's an inside baseball reference.
Yeah, that really is. And I feel a little dirty, by the way. I know what you're referencing.
No, Mark, the correct response is they're in the mail.
Okay. They're in the mail, Alexis. I
There
mailed
you
your
go.
flowers.
They'll arrive at some point in the next couple of weeks, and if they're not, take it up with the government-subsidized organization. Enjoy the bureaucracy.
Listen.
So, Alexis, how you doing good, apart from your lack of flowers?
Yes, I'm doing well. Excited to talk about this. I've been excited about this movie since the first trailer dropped.
All right, and joining us, because we cannot talk tabletop role-playing games in general, or Dungeons & Dragons in particular, without Ronnie Adams popping up like a groundhog. The topic comes up in the chat.
Hey, I don't pop up like a groundhog. I don't
Would you
pop
prefer-
up like a groundhog. I jump in like a kangaroo.
I'm gonna say, would you prefer Onkeg? You are the purple worm that senses vibrations and erupts from the ground.
Purple worm, that's what they call me at the sex house.
Please stop,
Oh
Mark.
my god! Please don't ruin that. Don't. That's one of my favorite monsters.
Please don't. You're ruining it's the title of my sex tape. How you doing, Ronnie Adams?
I'm doing good. I was until you did that. No,
You
I'm
don't
doing
make
good,
enough
man.
money
Yeah,
to make. You don't make enough money on this endeavor to pay off for the NDAs, Mark. Don't do it.
You were saying, Ronnie?
I am excited because I am a forever DM. I started playing when I was in junior high school, so I've loved Dungeons and Dragons. I even watched. I've as an adult, I might add, I've watched the '80s cartoon over again. So,
Oh my god, I remember the '80s cartoon. Alexis, did you watch the '80s cartoon too?
I actually didn't even know about the 80s cartoon until like a few years ago. But yeah, I freaking love it.
If you pay
okay,
attention,
did you all notice
that-
the Easter egg?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that-
in the maze.
Yep.
That they are there, but no Uni the unicorn. What the crap?
That's fine. Unicorns are jerks.
I watched
Well, maybe
it.
they're saving it for the sequel. I mean, we didn't get a freaking Beholder either. What's up with that?
I watched the
Oh, there
cartoon when
it
I
is.
was a kid contemporaneously when it was actually on Saturday mornings. And the only
Yeah.
thing I really remember about it was like the electric bow and arrow, you know, like the
Which
magic
was
bow and arrow
amazing.
thing. Yeah, it really was. You were talking about playing as a kid. So I don't think I started playing until like late junior high, early high school. And I
Yeah.
played with kids who had been playing for years. And so I remember like the very first time I played, I was like playing a dwarf and I tried to hit on a human gal at a bar. And, you know, and I got the guy that I was playing with. I got all of his, you know, because I didn't know how to really play and I'm an idiot. I got like all of his stuff taken from him and like his like character, like, yeah, I was, and then I said the classic thing, Ronnie, you'll love this. I was like, why don't we just start over again and like, you know, just play over. And and the DM and the guy, poor Mike Mastermaker, who probably should have stabbed me that day, was just like, no, this is Dungeons and Dragons. You don't start over. Maybe you roll a new
don't.
character, but once you did what you did to your character, that's it. It's done. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
this game is dumb. I'm gonna go like try to meet girls now and listen to heavy metal.
Aw.
Speaking of girls and heavy metal, how about you, Alexis? Did you play D&D?
Not for years. I got into it a little bit. I want to get into it more. The problem is that majority of my friends who play either A, have long-running campaigns that you can't really stick a new character in, or B, have crazy-ass schedules and or kids. So trying to get all of us to get together at least once a month is next to impossible.
If
So
they
you don't
can't
have that
stick
much
a new character in a long-standing campaign, then they're not trying hard enough.
He's not
I'm
wrong.
serious.
So you haven't had that much experience with the game then?
No, I'm working with some friends who want to start a new game. This is actually kind of fun. They want to do it all bards, and we basically start a band.
That's
Oh, it's all
fantastic.
bards.
Please be Metallica in a D&D campaign.
It's not. It's not
And
hard. It's
you
college
be-
of,
You've even got
Go
the
ahead.
perfect college for the shitty agent.
How about you, Robert?
I haven't played a whole lot because I'm me. And if you know me, that doesn't require a whole lot more explanation.
Yep, we got it. We
Truer
all saw
words,
the
my
Oscar
friend.
podcast. We're good.
truer words.
But I like the game. I like there's a various TTRPGs that I I'm curious about them. I'm curious about, again, elements of the mechanics, the design philosophy. I watch other people. I watch a lot of live plays, not a lot, but a few, and it's fun to play around with. Other people who have more time and energy than I do, they make good, like some of the stuff that's out there on like YouTube and whatnot. That's not even playing, but just like rules discussions or character builds or whatnot is wonderful background noise when you're doing other stuff.
Okay.
So I've absorbed a lot of information, but because I don't meet people very easily or make friends or any of that stuff. Humans, regular social interaction. That ain't me.
You don't play very much. Did you ever read the how about the Dragonlance books? I'll tell you what. I'll go back to like my playing D&D in just a second because there's another.
I read the first one, which is what, Autumn's Fall, I think.
Yeah, I read the whole trilogy. I read the fourth book. I read Lord Soth, Cataclysm. I read a lot of like the spin-off stuff. I mostly stayed in the Dragonlance area. I didn't really branch out into like Forgotten Realms or Ravenloft, except for Lord Soth. What about you, Ronnie? Did you read any of the books?
All of them. Well, not all of them, but I picked up what I thought was Lord Soth, Raven. I didn't get into Strahd as much as I did the others back then, but I love Strahd now. But that's
I have
all the
desperately
Ravenloft title.
Pantsless Productions has desperately been trying to greenlight a Cataclysm movie. Like I wanted Patrick Stewart as the Grand Priest of Istar. I wanted to get like a Viggo Mortensen type, or just Viggo Mortensen for Lord Soth. Like I had this whole thing like in my dude. I have fan casted and like in my mind shot the Cataclysm movie so many times. What about you? Sorry, go ahead, Ronnie.
I was just saying, I went Forgotten Realms, I went Dragonlance, I went Ravenloft, and I went even some of the others. I can't remember. There was one about giants that I read really, and it was a Firbolg who fell in love with a giant princess and all this other stuff. It was really, really good. So yeah, I read all those books.
I've never identified more with a character than I do right now with Raceland, constantly coughing up blood. But that's really personal to me.
Yeah. Oh, Lord, Mark.
My health is failing. Anyway.
Not in the proclivity for just fireballing your problems away.
Turning on your entire party and running away to serve your own needs. Yeah, that's kind of how things are now. Alexis, did you read the Dragonlance books?
Not as such.
No? Okay. How about you, Robert?
Excuse me.
I read the first one. I never really got into them. I kind of bounced off a lot of high fantasy for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I can kind of recall this story. If you know anything about scouting, I was at the Philmont Scout Ranch. We did the 2-week thing there when I was would have been right after high school, I think. So like 04, possibly 05. And one of the other guys on the trek with us, while he was in the middle of when we were partway through, he finished. He had brought with him to read the first book in I forget which trilogy it is, but it's the one that deals with Drizzt.
Okay.
And he gave it to me after he loaned it to me for like the rest of the hike, and I gave it back to him. But I read that. I wound up finishing that entire trilogy. I've read a lot of the Salvatore stuff.
Okay.
That's set in the Forgotten Realms.
Mm-hmm.
Fell off of that for a while, but.
I started reading whatever the one that was set in the desert planet. I read some of those books.
Dark Sun.
There would have been a Dark Sun.
Mm-hmm. Low magic.
That's a fun setting.
Yeah,
really, yeah.
Hey, remember Tatooine from Star Wars? That, but Dungeons and Dragons.
It's
and darker.
Halflings are cannibals.
So back to you, Ronnie. So we were talking about like our kind of history with this product, this long running game. I talked about one thing I after my first disaster with poor Mike Mastermaker, I did continue to play and I got really good. I played mostly like fighter characters. Like I would play barbarians, or I would play. I had a long running game where I played a psionist that I was pretty successful with.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was just like a shapeshifter. I would do like animals and stuff. But even though I had like a regular D&D name, I got nicknamed by my friends Bait McTrapspringer because I had a tendency. I had a tendency to, and very like not my character, as you guys know me. I run headlong into every dungeon in every fight. I
Yeah,
was always
that's-
like charge ahead.
that seems so wildly odd. I applaud your roleplay ability, Mark. to
Yeah,
just so
very
divorce
unlike my real
yourself from your
character. The other really funny thing, and then I'll go back to you, Ronnie, because I wanted to ask you about what you're doing now.
Sure.
We were playing this one campaign with a bunch of my friends. Now, at this point, we're in our 20s. Like we are much older. And he goes, "Okay, in order to get past you have to say the phrase." And we had all throughout the campaign, we had all these different clues, but we're a bunch of dumbasses and we couldn't get it. And so he finally was like, "Okay, I'm going to give you another clue. This should give you the key phrase. DROFTY." And one of my friends goes, "Drofty?" And that was the end of the game. That was the end of the game because for the rest of the night we kept saying, "Someone close the window. It's a little drofty in here." He meant dragon of Tyr, but no. For the rest of the night we were drofty. We were calling the DM drofty at that point. Like he was no longer James. We were just like, "No, your new name is drofty."
Oh my god!
Yeah, that'd do it.
All right. Well, I tack up along, Ronnie. Why don't you tell us what you're doing now these days?
Cool. Well, now these days, on every other Saturday, I have open sessions where I, at my local game store, teach kids and adults, 2 different sessions, of course, how to play D&D. We also welcome veteran players of the game in, and we do just a level 5 one-shot. If you like it, come on back. If you don't, you don't have to. But we have a lot of people coming in learning how to play. The kids in particular love it. I'm usually banking about 10 kids per session, which if you DM'd or played, that's a lot unless you're first edition. Then you invited the entire world to your table. But I also do that. I also have a Twitch channel, which we have just, for right now, we're taking a break from streaming because we played a game without streaming and it's the most fun we had in a while. But I'm still going to get on there and, do DM tips and things like that here soon. But we're playing Rime of the Frost Maiden. That's one of my regular games. On the off Saturdays, we do that here at the game store. Tonight was the first session of a group of guys with, we started Dragonlance, Shadow of the Dragon Queen. And then I'm actually have another group of young men that I'm DMing for on Sundays. And I also am a professional DM. I'm here to DM your games at your birthday parties, bachelor parties, bar mitzvahs, whatever you have, and you want to be geeky at it, I will help you. Nerdy at it, I will help you. And so I've fully immersed myself in the world of tabletop role-playing games. So it's just not Dungeons and Dragons, but that's the main one right now, which it's also my first love of tabletop role-playing games. So I'll always go back to it. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm diving in the world of professional DM, just dipping my toes in it right now, and got a bunch of other games going on. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, was there anything else you wanted to talk about with regards to the topic at large of D&D before we got into the movie?
I mean, honest to goodness, in my opinion, it is the perfect game because the way I play it, I play rules, but I play rules light. So all you need is your imagination. Anything you can think of can happen, pretty much. I let my players run their imaginations within reason, of course. It is the most fun I've had sitting around the table with a bunch of people, and whether it's a really serious session or just a beer and pretzels kind of game or something. This Dungeons and Dragons is amazing. Miniatures, miniature terrain, or just the theater of the mind. Whatever you want, it's there for you, and it's a passion, really.
Very cool. What were your expectations? And I'll open this up to everybody before Robert does his plot synopsis, his very, very quick plot synopsis. What were your expectations for the movie after the disaster that was the Marlon Wayans one?
Me,
Yeesh.
so the Marlon Wayans one really, really makes me cry.
Why does it make you cry, Hobbit?
because it's terrible. I mean, even then, even in 2000, I was like, oh my god, a Dungeons and Dragons movie. Let's watch this. Oh my gosh, that was a fart in church. That's how bad it was.
I actually have a theory about that movie.
What is your theory, Alexis Hannah?
I'm convinced. Okay, so some executive says, we should make a Dungeons and Dragons movie. Another person goes, well, hey, we just bought the script from this person. It's not a Dungeons and Dragons script, but it's got some dragons and it's got some fantasy elements. Cool, slap Dungeons and Dragons on it. But it really doesn't have anything to do with the property. We don't care. Slap the name on it.
I'm 110% with you. They had a fantasy script lying around in an office, and they're like, slap the logo on it. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I would agree with
Pretty
that.
much.
And if you look at the swords and stuff, I think they got the creators of Hercules and Xena, the Xena Warrior Princess, to do a lot of the action and the swords and everything in that. So,
Poor Jeremy
the
Irons,
weaponry.
man.
Oh, Jeremy Irons did that for a paycheck.
I heard he actually was told by the director, you're acting too good. You're making everyone look bad. Stop it. So he just said, fine. And he just decided to chew the scenery.
If you've seen some of the behind-the-scenes stuff from that, the instant they say cut, the very instant, like, bless him for doing everything he could, to with what he had there, but man, you could tell he knew what he was doing. Like, he knew the writing was on the wall for that one. I mean,
Well, that whole movie was just a disaster from Jump Street. I mean, it had a terrible cast. It had a terrible plot. It was terrible.
Okay, so what were your expectations of this one, knowing that one it was a complete disaster?
When I found out who was directing it and who wrote the script, I had higher expectations for it. I don't normally tend to let my expectations go too high on things like this, but when I found out, especially John Francis Daley, so I found out that he was writing it and directing it along with his partner. I was like, Freaks and Geeks started him playing Dungeons and Dragons, and he's been a fan ever since. So I was like, okay, we have a fan who has actually played the game, writing and directing the movie. I'm in.
I think it's also fair to point out that the team behind this also gave us Game Night, which is a criminally underrated comedy. It's really good film.
Game Night's hilarious.
Yeah, it just didn't get the publicity it needed.
I saw that in the theaters when I had Movie Pass. Ronnie, remember Movie Pass? Oh, Ronnie, what happened to Movie Pass?
Movie Pass broke my heart and then pooped on my head.
I remember laughing at you about Movie Pass, Mark.
Lexus, what were your expectations for the movie?
I was going in feeling really good about it. From the trailers, it looked like they were doing a little bit more tongue-in-cheek and a little more respect to the source material, as it were. Like I said, I'm not a huge Dungeons and Dragons player, but I've got friends who are DMs, and when the trailer was released, I was hanging out with them like, oh my god, you guys got to see this. And I showed it to them, and they were adorable, like bouncing up and down in their chair when they saw the owl bear and the mimic, and they found out that Chris Pine was playing the bard. And seeing them that happy is actually what gave me the confidence to think this could really be a decent movie.
Yeah, since Mark's, occupied, let me give you mine real fast.
Yeah.
I had a little bit of hope for this after the first trailer, and then like the 2 weeks leading up to this, some of the PR stuff that came out about it really soured me on this movie. Not the actual reviews, but there's a somewhat infamous quote at this point that, again, someone involved with production, probably too high up to actually matter. They were quoted as like, yeah, we had a lot of fun making this, and it's great emasculating leading men and just crap like that they're doing just for headlines.
Oh, Lord.
Again, like, it's bad rage baiting. And
there's nothing emasculating in this movie.
Like, that's the kicker, right? Like, after the movie,
what's emasculating? That Holga has a thing for halflings?
It's just like the whole thing with, I forget who, like the head of Wizards of the Coast, who actually went on a podcast and said that it was time for old white men to leave the hobby. He said it just to bait. I mean, that's all there is to it.
Plus, You don't want to know how much of your player base is left if that were the case, guys.
Dude, I mean, that's 75 to 80% of it right there.
It's
Yeah,
a
no
it's a big
kidding.
chunk. So
Yeah,
there was
I don't think there was anything quote unquote controversial
No.
about this. I don't. I mean, correct, Robert. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I cannot recall anything that felt like obvious baiting just to say, "Oh, look, we're on the right side," kind of an attitude.
No, there wasn't, and that's one of the things that kind of indicates to me that whoever made that quote had nothing to do with the actual production of the movie. Like you got like an EP credit, but you did nothing. And it was reminiscent actually of because there was one half of part of the creative team for House of the Dragon that was super, social activist with the sound bites coming out about that show. In point of fact, if you watch, like if you actually, and I liked House of the Dragon, it's actually just really well made.
We gave it a stellar review on TV Party Tonight. Plug.
And your TikTok did very well naming with the different dragon names, by the way.
That was a fun discussion.
But if you do like the behind the episode stuff, you can see like here's one half of this allegedly creative team going, yeah, and this is where we're doing X, Y, and Z, and then they show the scene and nothing about X, Y, and Z is done. Like, okay, you weren't actually there, you didn't actually do anything, you're just sucking up space. I think that was the half of the creative team that left after the first season. So
all right, so let's get into the plot now of Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, so we can talk about it.
all right, I must apologize in advance, everyone. You see, there is an unforgivable sin in this movie. Truly unforgivable. Just ruins the whole thing. It has Hugh Grant.
Oh, come on. Hugh Grant
Get outta
kicks
here.
ass as a cheesy villain.
And
He is
You
fun.
know he's my spirit animal.
Hugh Grant in general or Hugh Grant's character?
No, well, Hugh Grant mostly from The Gentleman, but more or less Hugh Grant.
Mark believes Hugh Grant is his spirit animal because he believes Hugh Grant is charming, and Mark wants nothing more than to be just off gay like Hugh Grant.
Yeah, I really do. I aspire to be off gay Hugh Grant from The Gentleman.
Yeah, he really does, and I hate Hugh Grant.
I hated Hugh Grant back in the 90s when most people hated Hugh Grant, but I'm not going to lie. I feel like he's really found a good a niche for his characters and everything in his movies now, and he's having fun with it. I mean, I think he was really enjoyable in this role.
When I refer to people as my love, I'm absolutely doing Hugh Grant from The Gentleman.
Just very badly.
Yeah, well, that's how I do everything.
Much like Hugh Grant, very badly.
Move this on.
Okay. Oh, well.
Like the only thing Hugh Grant's done that was actually good in the last like 27 years was that interview he did at the Oscars where he just no-sold that terrible vapid interviewer.
So,
Okay,
Loki.
so let's go ahead and talk about how we have, what's his name? Elgin, played by Chris Pine.
I got it. I'm moving on. Don't worry
Come
about
on.
it.
I was about to say who has aged like a
Elgin.
very fine wine.
So we are introduced to our primary. It's not a straight just duotagonist, but it's kind of a duotagonism between Chris Pine's character of Edgin and Michelle Rodriguez playing Holga. Michelle Rodriguez is just playing Michelle Rodriguez. That's kind of all she can do.
Letty from The Fast and the Furious.
No one has ever accused Michelle Rodriguez of being a kick-ass actress, but this was a role that was pretty much tailor-made to someone like her. So
Yes, she was the
Pretty
perfect
much.
actress for this role.
The thing about it is, I got to give her due. She actually showed a little bit of more of a character in this one than she does as Letty or any other. Caring for the kid, and
I imagine the
hitting
director actually
on the
asked her to do
baffling.
things in this one instead of the Fast and the Furious, where it's just, hey, exist.
exist
Yeah.
and glare. Make
Be-
sure you
so-
glare.
Be flung from a car or drive it. Robert, please go.
Yeah, you got that out of your system?
I would let you get this plot out of your system.
So we're introduced to them as they are in prison in the far north, and they escape. While at their parole hearing, Chris Pine, rather than do a Morgan Freeman and actually give a good response to the parole board, gives his backstory, which he calls his backstory. There's some really wonderful little meta jokes like that in this. And he talks about how he used to be a member of a somewhat secret society called the Harpers, a group of people sworn to do good and oppose evil. But it doesn't pay that well. So he stole some treasure that was marked by the Red Wizards of Thay, who are just evil. And they traced it to his house where his wife and young daughter were, and they killed his wife, but his daughter lived. And he abandoned his faith and his oath, and he became a thief with Holga, who found him drunk in a tavern, which is really where you find most people in your life, I think. And they joined up with Simon, the only sorcerer in existence who used charisma as a dump stat. Hugh Grant, for plot reasons. And the wizard, Sophia, who's totally not evil. And they're big heist hero, and they bring his daughter along because nothing says good parenting like giving your child a necklace of invisibility and saying, hide while we steal stuff.
I mean, look, babysitters are hard to come by in this land.
And they're hard to come by in this land. I imagine fantasy land is true
Hey,
too.
Holga was the babysitter, and she was busy, killing people.
So they
they never hurt anybody.
Oh,
Sure
yeah,
they
that's
did.
true. He does
They never
say that.
killed anybody.
Speaking of killing someone, keep going.
So they decide to break into a Harper stronghold in no small part because it contains within it a tablet of reawakening, which, when consumed, allows the user to cast the true resurrection spell once. And this will bring back his wife from the dead because other magics just aren't powerful enough, because when she died, she was stabbed by a blade from a red wizard. And that kills you dead. No resurrection magic. You need special stuff. But they didn't let the rogue actually check for traps when they get into the vault, which is a big mistake. They trigger an alarm, and Sophia is the one who finds something. It's magic. It's red.
Looks like a horn.
It's bad times. But as the guards descend on them because their alarm has been sprung, she, because she is a powerful wizard, casts Time Stop and uses the 12 to 13 seconds that spell allows you to get out of there. But she escapes, Hugh Grant escapes, Simon escapes, whereas Edgin and Holga are caught and they are exiled to Siberia.
Don't forget, Edgin tells Hugh Grant, he says, I need you to look after my daughter for me, and he swears to. So
Indeed. And we cut back to the prison, where the one member of the parole board who was late arrives, and it's an Aarakocra. And despite having effectively pled his case and being granted a pardon, which he only hears about as they're falling out of the building, he and Holga grab this poor Aarakocra, this poor bureaucrat. They jump through a window with him and rely on him to fly them at least to a degree of safety. They then escape the frigid north. They head south and they discover, lo and behold, Hugh Grant has become the Lord of Neverwinter. Because he is. So they go to Neverwinter and they try to reconnect with him, and lo and behold, Hugh Grant is evil. I mean, he's playing an evil character. No, I mean Hugh Grant's evil. That too. He has told Chris Pine's daughter for the 2 years or so he's been gone that no, he only wanted riches and he abandoned you, and really you can't trust him. And he goes, and it turns out again that Sophia, the wizard, was in fact evil. She is a red wizard of Thay as well. She has helped install Hugh Grant as the Lord of Neverwinter for nefarious purposes. And
he doesn't care. He's getting gold. He doesn't care what she does.
Not in the least. Much like Hugh Grant in real life, does not care about you.
Can we set up a tally of how many times he makes a Hugh Grant joke?
I'm waiting for Mark's head to explode.
It's getting close.
We're getting there. They try to execute our plucky heroes. This does not go well, as it almost never does. Chris Pine decides, okay, he's still got the Tablet of Reawakening. We can break in and we can get it. And he's hosting a big festival. That'll be the perfect cover. Okay, but we need help. We can't do this on our own. So they find Simon, the sorcerer with no charisma and no backbone. And they recruit him and they try to help start giving him back his confidence because he's a magic user. But they still need someone with sneaky capabilities. And Simon goes, I know a guy. Well, I know a tiefling. And we meet Doric, the tiefling wizard.
Druid.
Druid.
Why did I screw that up? Anyway. Tiefling druid, who transforms into an owl bear and wrecks some evil loggers because...
Should we have our environmentalist plot?
It's a druid, I'll allow it.
More loggers?
They are able to recruit her. She decides to come along, and the druid's wild shaping ability is perfect for infiltration and stealth missions. This is true in the game as well as in the movie. So they begin reconnaissance, and they discover that the vault where all the gold and treasure that's being brought in for the High Sun Games is being stored. And it's locked behind Mordenkainen's magic seal.
Super powerful magic seal. Ain't nobody gonna get through that thing.
And Simon drops to the bench in the tavern where he is told this and goes, "But that's an 8th level spell, don't you understand?" Actually, I forget what level it is, but it's close.
And then we get one of the best speeches. Can't you just use magic? Everyone says just use magic, and that's not the way it works.
And they decide, well, there is a magic item that will help us in this endeavor, because of course there is. It is the Helmet of Disjunction, and if we can find it, it will disable magical enchantments within a significant radius. Go, great, we know the thing. And Holga goes, well, my backstory is useful because my people, hundreds of years ago, fought a battle over this against the Cult of the Dragon. All right, fine, we'll go to your people's sacred burial grounds, commit some light grave robbery, which is, you know...
Mild necrophilia.
Oh, no, Mark. Grave robbing, illegal in some states, all states, possibly all states.
It's not actually grave robbing if they're not taking anything. They basically dig the corpses up. They ask them 5 questions, and
I
then
think
the
what I
corpses
said
go
was
back to
closer
sleep.
to it was mild necrophilia. They're molesting corpses.
What is happening right now?
It's the ghost of Jason Teasley.
It's more just grave defilement than I suppose grave robbing. That's true.
Again, I was the closest.
Admittedly, though, this is probably the best scene in the whole movie as they realize they have to continuously dig up graves and ask them questions.
As someone who has dug a couple of graves in his life, that is physically exhausting. I commend them for being able to dig them up.
Yeah.
So they go to this big... they go to this big graveyard, they dig up corpses, and they have some fun with Speak with Dead, which is a very fun magic spell, very useful. And they talk with some of the dead people and try to figure out where did the helmet wind up. And it turns out it wound up in the hands of this Thayan paladin. And Chris Pine has to confront his prejudice, don't you understand? Minor subplot. And they have to find... So now we have to find this paladin who had the thing to get the thing to get the other thing to do the thing. And someone has at least heard of this paladin. In fact, everyone has heard of this paladin, hears well of him except Chris Pine, who is a racist. So they go to try and find the paladin, and along the way they stop by at Holga's ex's, and it's Bradley Cooper in halfling form.
I want to know how the hell that cameo came about. I don't know if Bradley Cooper's a D&D fan. He was just on set that day. It's just like
I'm sure he heard it. I'm sure he heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who heard it just the other day.
Probably. Like, it's one of those things. Like, it comes a little bit out of left field, but he and Holga have a moment where she says, "I left my tribe because they hated me for loving small people because they're bigots." It's Fantasyland. Everyone's a racist, some variety or another.
Back when men were men and the sheep were frightened.
And he looks at her with his big blue eyes and goes, "And you never moved on from that. I wanted to give you a home and a place worth living in, and we have no sexual contact, and I was happy to change diapers, and I'm just Arnold's version of masculinity from dark feminism, and it's not great. It's not great." No, I
Why
can't.
don't you talk about the plot?
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
Actually, a better representation of D&D is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Believe it or
I
not.
remember when we did a podcast and I started laughing at something Ronnie. I think I started laughing at the Hit It Darren, and Ronnie started to have a fucking meltdown in the middle of the podcast, and he was screaming and laughing. "What are you laughing at?" Like accusingly. "What are you laughing at?" And I'm like dying laughing about it.
You can't quite get out Hit It, Darren.
Yeah, I can't get out Hit It, Darren. And Ronnie can't fucking keep it together, but he's not quite sure why I'm laughing, and so he's just yelling at me. But now he's laughing. You would have thought we were all on drugs. That was like the best podcast.
night. It was
It really
amazing.
was.
I love
What do you
it.
mean thought?
All right.
Anyway, so I bring that up just to say I actually appreciated the way they handled that interaction between those two. It could have been really stupid,
Mhm.
and it wasn't.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
And-
I mean, it was heartwarming, really. I mean, because he really was in love with her, and she was in love with him, even though she's a human, he's a halfling. Now, it wasn't because he was a halfling. It's just that she went outside the tribe and married somebody else,
Right.
and they didn't approve of it. But of course, they probably wouldn't have approved of a halfling anyway because he's a halfling. But I really appreciated the way they put halflings as like they were proportioned like I don't know like a human, but they were just very, very small.
Yeah, they weren't
And-
hobbits. It was like somebody
Yeah, they were-
just shrunk in size in Photoshop.
Right. So
Yeah.
it was really cool. But anyway, go ahead.
I
Anyway.
also appreciated they avoided the whole angry ex stereotypes. I mean, these two still, they're upset, but they still have a very sweet talk. And he meets, or she meets his new wife, girlfriend, I don't know. And it could have been like, oh, that's your ex. Oh, well, I see why you left her, or some shit like that. But no, she's friendly, and it's a very nice scene.
But while they're there, she picks up the busted magic item that just happened to be lying around.
They think it's a walking staff.
It turns out to be it's a portal gun. That's all it is. It's a portal gun.
Oh, good. I'm not the only one who said that in the middle of the theater.
You're not. So we get that closure for her backstory. They find the paladin. The paladin says, I secluded the helmet of disjunction away in the Underdark because it was very important. And no one would find it there. And they go, great, we got to go to the Underdark. That sucks because it's a terrible place. Fine, we'll go to the Underdark. So they all go to the Underdark. And the paladin is good and virtuous and upright and
Well,
inspires
he's a paladin that they all are.
That is absolutely not true.
Mm-hmm.
And he begins inspiring them, and he tells them his tragic backstory, where his parents were murdered by Zastam, the lich who leads the Red Wizards of Thay, in his bid for power when he used a red horn, very much like the one that Sophina now has, to call down the beckoning death. And
He turned all of the people into zombie slaves.
more or less. And he managed to escape, but now has a brand on his forehead, and he was forever changed. Typical stuff. Anyway, they go into the Underdark, and and there's intellect devourers, which are actually quite dangerous, especially if you're a bunch of idiots. But they handwave that with, well, they're really drawn more to attack people of high intellect, and they just walk right by them. And Chris Pine goes, well, that's a little hurtful.
Could be wrong, but isn't it also true that those 4 classes, none of them rely on intellect as...
That would be correct.
wizards
Yeah, so
do,
it's a
don't
nice
they?
little double joke,
He's
even
not
if
a-
you're not a D&D fan.
He's
not a wizard.
sorcerer.
He's a sorcerer.
So the D&D nerd in me has to tell you this. There are 3 different kinds of pure casters. There's wizards, warlocks, and sorcerers. Wizards learn it. Warlocks.
Every cleric player in the world just threw something at you, by the way. They're full casters.
Clerics are half. I don't care what you say. Clerics are half casters.
They get
Please
9th
stop,
level
please
spells.
Please stop arguing
Nine-
with a professional D&D player.
Look, you get 9th level spells, you're a full caster. Druids are full casters. too.
Sorry, they rely a lot on strength too. So
Can continue, nerd.
Warhammers and everything.
So,
Anyway.
Loki.
Warlocks make a deal for it. They have a sugar daddy, mostly that turns out to be really bad, like a demon or something.
Sorry,
And
Mark, I thought that
sorcerers-
would actually work.
Sorcerers are born with it, and they don't know how to quite control it. That's where you
Wait,
get
what was that
wild
second one
magic.
again? Explain. Wait,
Warlocks.
go back. Explain the sugar daddy thing. No. Shut up. I'm doing something. What was the sugar daddy
No,
thing
you're
again?
doing something, all right.
Warlocks make a deal for their magic powers. They have a demonic or eldritch or godly whatever sugar daddy.
So they're like polyamorous women. Gone. There it is. I got him. I popped him.
Oh, yes, they are.
New
That's what the casters are. So,
He's about
new
to say new space on the bingo card. Yeah, Evan already beat you to it.
No. New subclass for wizards, the Pact of the Thought.
All right. So anyway,
Nice.
getting back to the my question
plot.
was,
Oh,
Well, not only that, but my question was just so we can move this on. If the bit about the intellect, it wouldn't any caster of any sort, whether it be however you just described those three, be dependent on intellect?
No.
The only one that's dependent on intellect is the one who has to actually learn, write down,
Okay.
and memorize spells. So
the others, because they have it naturally, like mutants,
yeah,
they don't depend on intellect. Fine, moving on.
or their sugar daddy gives them the present.
Got it.
There's
Robert.
only two classes that exist that actually rely on
Get to the fat
intelligence.
dragon.
No. Mark.
Okay, Robert, seriously, get to Eddie in dragon form.
He's talking about his dog.
The corgi.
Oh, you don't.
Because I refuse to believe that whoever designed that dragon did not model it after either their corgi or their bulldog.
Talk about the fat dragon. Go.
For the record, the only two classes that use intelligence are wizards and artificers. And artificers
Okay,
aren't
we
even
got
in
it.
the official one. But so they're ignored by intellect devourers as they walk by, presumably either a drow city or, since intellect devourers are there, an illithid hive, avoiding a much more interesting story. They arrive at the Hanging City, where this paladin has stashed this powerful helmet. And the sorcerer infringes on Mark's gimmick and just steps on a trap that collapses the bridge they need to get over there. But they have a portal gun.
Really funny.
But they have a portal gun.
Steps and everything and how complicated it is. It's just like, screw it. Destroy.
But they have a portal gun, so it's all good. So they portal gun their way over to the area where he hit it. A bunch of the Thrayans show up. We get a fight scene where the paladin fights with one of the dumbest weapons in the world. Shooting swords are just dumb. But they can't.
Go
They're
ahead.
just dumb.
No,
This is going to be a 9-hour podcast.
it really is. That's why I shut up.
But they're able to. They can't quite kill them because killing the undead is, well, it's kind of a feat. It takes some effort. But their Fracas awakens the fat dragon Thumbershard, who is actually a canonical dragon. I forget the city, but he's actually the source of the forge, of all the heat for forges for a dwarven city in the Underdark. He's a real thing.
He is.
They encounter him, and him, being a fat, helpful dragon, kills all the Thrayans, and then goes after them. They're able to... They nearly drown, but they're able to escape. The paladin then leaves the party because he helped them do what they wanted to do. They try to make a plan, but our sorcerer has to attune to the Helmet of Disjunction to use it, and he can't. He just can't. We have our moment of crisis where Chris Pine confesses that I am the biggest failure. Don't you understand? All their drama crashes around, but Chris Pine decides we have to keep going. I'm going to make a plan, and we're going to fix this, and if you want to be part of this, fine, come along. And they all decide to stick together and try and figure it out. So they come up with a plan. They're going to get a portrait. They're going to put a portal on the back of it. They're going to have it smuggled into the treasure room because they'll just drop it off with a bunch of the other stuff from one of the other rich lords who's showing up to gamble on the High Sun Games. This goes more or less okay. Not great, but okay. Because there's always complications. They break into one of them, the druid, gets into the treasure room, only to discover that it's not behind the locked door. And the sorcerer is able to finally attune to the Helmet of Disjunction as we're all fighting through the castle. And he opens the door, but alas, it is not to the treasure vault. It's just to an empty room where they are then molested by Evard's black tentacles. And this is the point at which Mark decided, we will never get better than tentacles. I am leaving the theater. They are all caught. This was still something of an elaborate trap for them. And rather than simply be executed, they decide, throw them into the high games. They must die in the arena, Mark. They must die in the arena.
It's gladiator times. Thrown to the lions, or in this case, thrown to the displacer beasts.
Or it's Attack of the Clones. At the end.
It was even dumber.
Yep.
So they get tossed into the big labyrinth with displacer beasts running around, and there's a mimic, which I laughed at. And there's a gelatinous cube, and they're able to use the cube to escape the maze. As again, there's an Easter egg for the original D&D cartoon characters. They are in this. They are one of the parties in this, and they all survive, and they get to the middle, and they hopefully survive what happens next. Although if they couldn't get out of that cage, they wouldn't. But they've developed a new plan, so they escape the arena. They know where all the treasure's being loaded, because what's going on here is not actually the High Sun Games. It's Hugh Grant, the vile Hugh Grant. He is robbing all of them, and he will then away with his ill-gotten gains and leave the city in the clutches of Sophia, the evil red wizard. And Chris Pine goes and talks with his daughter and convinces her to come with him, that Hugh Grant was lying. So she goes down with them. They all are able to escape, to get on the ship, and they go to leave, and it's all going to be happy hunky-dory. But then we see in the distance that now Sophia is in possession of the right artifact, and the right time has passed, and she calls down the beckoning death. And they recognize what's happening, and they all heave a great sigh, because they've grown consciences during this time period, and they can't just let the whole city of Neverwinter be turned into a zombie necropolis. So they turn their boat around, and they go back to stop the evil. And they are able to save the people in the arena by, in a scene I'm sure Mark was very happy about, opening Hugh Grant's mouth on a hot air balloon and pouring things out of it. And all the treasure that they'd collected just goes spilling out through the portal holes. And all the people in the arena go, "Gold!" And they start running after it. And very few people are actually affected by the very powerful spell. And our heroes show up, and Sophia's like, "All right, enough of this. You have foiled me for the last time, you meddling D&D party, you. Let me get a fight." And again, it's a pretty typical fight. But in this fight, if you blinked or you weren't paying attention, you missed Holga getting stabbed by a red wizard's blade. And I really have issues with how they did that. But they're able to eventually stop Sophia's rampage when the Sorcerer Simon counterspells time stop. And then they put a magical inhibiting bracelet on her so she can't use magic. And then the Owlbear smashes her around and says, "Puny God," and then walks off.
Yep.
But our problem again is now Holga has been stabbed by this evil blade that prevents you from healing or being resurrected, except by very specific means. And hey, they happen to have that very specific means, because Chris Pine is still holding on to the tablet. And he decides to revive Holga, because Michelle Rodriguez must always come back from the dead at least once, rather than bring back his wife. They bring her back, and Hugh Grant is arrested and carted off to the Siberian wasteland from whence our heroes begun. And our heroes go about their merry ways, having learned a little bit about themselves, and that friendship was the real treasure all along. I'm a little bit sarcastic at the end there, but so be it.
All right, real
That
quick, and
is
then
the D&D movie.
real quick, and then I'm going to go to Ronnie for his thought, then Alexis, and then I'll give a little bit more of my craft stuff, and then Robert will back clean up. I saw this with my wife, who is not a fantasy person, and she was only there because her boyfriend was there, who is an avid D&D player. I also saw it with 4 kids, who at least 3 kids rather, 2 of which I don't think have ever played D&D before, but have some interest in it. 1 may have played. And I bring that up because whenever I watch a movie like this, and I'm able to see it with a few different people and get a few different perspectives, I like to see like what the reactions were in terms of like how a general audience might react to the movie. This is why I'm bringing it up. My wife thought this was fantastic, and like I said, she's not a nerd culture person. She very much like fucking hates nerd culture, but she
the kind of person who thinks that Big Bang Theory represents nerds.
Pretty much. And well, the kind of person who watches Big Bang Theory thinks that is nerd culture and identifies as Penny. It tells you everything you need to know about dear Melissa Radulich. But
just burying your wife on the podcast. Just
she'll hear it later too. And she's like, "It's me, I'm Penny." And like, anyway,
I sympathize with you, Mark.
I have no interest. I'm only interested in people. Anyway, it's a line from the show, by the way.
which is
so,
bad
but
there
she,
too.
but she loved the movie. I didn't realize the Fat Dragon was a real thing, so that I learned something from you guys. But she thought the Fat Dragon was hysterical. She thought Chris Pine was sufficiently roguish, Han Solo-ish, good leading man, and fun adventurer type. Despite the problem with a lot of nerd culture stuff is it tends to lose the normies. But when you can retain the normies and capture their interest, kind of like when, again, another similar thing with my wife, when she saw Guardians of the Galaxy, again, not a sci-fi fantasy person, but Guardians of the Galaxy was sufficiently relatable that she was able to enjoy the movie. Same thing here with Dungeons and Dragons. So that's the normie perspective. The kids thought it was fantastic. They were into it the entire time. They had shit tons of questions when it was over. So if you're talking about a movie where will this appeal to children, at least the kids I saw it with, and there were 3 very different kids, they all reacted positively to it. But the real, and that's why I'm interested in what Ronnie thought, the real test was whether or not the D&D guy was going to get it. And I asked Chris, what he thought about the movie, and were there enough, references and Easter eggs that he, was able to enjoy it. And he was like, yeah, between the gelatinous cube and the dragon and some other stuff, there was enough D&D stuff in the movie to make him feel like this was a well-made, loving project by people who care about the IP. And as a fan, he could invest himself, and he felt like he wasn't being insulted, nor was the product being insulted. And I thought that was like a nice takeaway from 3 different perspectives from people to make me think this is going to be a pretty wildly successful movie. So with that said, I'll go over to you, Ronnie. What did you think of the craft elements, Ronnie, the craft elements of Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves?
Meaning, okay. First and foremost, have your kid.
You've been on the show before, asshole. You know what I'm asking you.
You've never said craft elements with me.
Oh my
Slap
God.
dick.
Okay.
That's what I call my players, not the kids. Okay, so first and foremost, have the kids that you went with write their questions down and then just email them to me, and I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
The craft elements, meaning the making of it and all that, yeah, just what you asked the other D&D guy.
Just tell me what you thought of the fucking movie, dude.
I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I really did. There was enough stuff in there to make it a D&D movie, like the creatures and the spells. I mean, there's so many actual spells that happen in that movie from the game that would blow your mind if you knew them. It blew my mind. Like Witch Bolt, Fire Bolt, Cone of Cold. All these
Bigby's hand makes an appearance.
Bigby's hand, along with Maximilian's Earthen Grasp. They fight each other.
Bigby's hand is still better.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
It's a higher level spell. It's just better.
True, but anyway, you can cast lower level spells at higher levels. It had enough in there, and it didn't oversaturate it. So we were talking about beholders before. If they put a beholder in there, I think it would have been a little too much if they put anything else in there. We got a black dragon. We got a fat red dragon. The black dragon spit acid. The red dragon tried to spit fire. Fire breath and all this other. It was just enough for me to go, holy crap, this is exactly what I wanted, with room for more in later movies, if they decide to do more movies. The elements of the characters. I mean, like the sorcerer, the low charisma sorcerer who uses, it's supposed to be his main stat, but then he finds his confidence and it raises up. And the awkward druid who probably lived on her own. And all, it reminded me of an actual D&D party. Whereas I don't think Chris Pine's character, even though they call him one, I don't think he's a bard. I think he's an actual thief, like a rogue, mixed with a little bit of a fighter.
They definitely wrote him more as a rogue who has maybe some bard talent.
He's a rogue with a subclass of spy with a little bit of fighter in there. So, I'm even looking at subclasses of these, Circle of the Moon.
Yeah, he'd be
the druid.
Yeah, Pine would be a mastermind. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you would have, you had the sorcerer, wild magic sorcerer, and then you had, even Hugh Grant was a mastermind subclass.
Well, I think Hugh Grant was supposed to be the rogue.
Well, he was
allegedly.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
And then then you have the subclass of sexy beast for the paladin, because everybody's like, oh my god, he's so cute. I mean, he actually did a really amazing job in the movie though. But it was so cool to see all these things that I've read about or used on the tabletop or anything come to life on a screen. So I loved this movie. I could not really, honestly, the only flaw I found with it is like, oh, the bard didn't use magic. But when I started thinking about it, I was like, he wasn't really a bard. He was a rogue and with a little bit of a fighter mixed in. And I really appreciate it. Oh, and the barbarian, she was amazing as that, just because that's who she is in real life, I'm sure. But the whole thing is just like, I was a kid again in the theater, man. It was great. I loved it.
That's great. All right, Alexis, continuing to give this movie a hand job. What did you think of it?
One of the things I loved about this movie was that even if you're not a huge D&D player, this is still very enjoyable. I mentioned a whole thing about the intellect devours. Even if you have never played around, they give a very brief explanation of what they are. You understand it, and you get the joke when they walk by and they don't notice anyone. Again, that's funny. And if you're a D&D player, you really get the joke. If you're not, you still laugh at it.
Right.
I thought that this movie did a really good job of that. They appealed to the fans. They appealed to the general audiences. I felt they struck a very good balance. I loved all the actors. I loved the chemistry that they all had. I thought they all did a really good job. Again, I loved Hugh Grant as this corny villain. He was just freaking hilarious in it. Yeah, we can argue forever about whether or not Chris Pine was actually a bard, but you know what? The man is a trained singer, and he actually sounds really good. So we got a musical number out of him, especially with that very disturbing melting bard scene. that was
amazing.
Oh, it was funny.
Yeah, I just love that he started repeating like it was a fucking record skip. That was a nice touch. Again, tons of Easter eggs. Loved seeing the 80s cartoon characters also in the maze. I thought the special effects were all quite good. I just didn't really have anything that I didn't like about this movie. I really enjoyed it. I would happily see it again.
All right.
I've already seen it twice.
And now for the scatological part of our review, Robert and I will rip it to pieces and poop on it. It's great. Don't get me wrong. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. My son always, like, as soon as we're done, he just like, Father, calls me Father.
Please validate my opinion, Dad.
No, he's always like, tell me what you thought of the. He just desperately wants to know what I thought of the movie, and it's like I haven't even had time to think about it yet. We went out to lunch after, and I started to do basically prep for this show. So I started talking through what I thought about it. Ronnie, do your best here to deal, because I'm gonna be critical.
No.
It's a slight movie. It's an enjoyable, family-friendly action-adventure fantasy romp. It is absolutely catnip for the masses. It is exactly the kind of movie that a Chris and a Melissa, who are opposite sides of the pole, for a Ronnie and an Alexis, to really enjoy. And that is not a bad thing about this movie. That is a very good thing. Paramount really knocked it out of the park with this. But by the same token, there are some critical elements that I need to point out. Not the least of which is, and I know Robert was probably thinking about this because he is, of course, the expert on villainy. The weakest. This felt like a Marvel movie where there's so much world building and team building and character building. They utterly neglect the villain. The villain is almost a non-issue, and it's like it's essentially the villain acts as a thing to fight at the end and a minor obstacle to kind of move things along. But if you'll notice the structure of the movie, as Robert was saying in the plot, that's why we walk through the plot synopsis, because a lot of times it illuminates some of the problems, like with the pitch meetings, like it illuminates some of the problems with the movie as a whole. And that is, it's in a way, this is a good thing because it goes to what D&D fans like and what they do playing Dungeons and Dragons. But it's also a bad thing because this is not how movies should work. And what I mean by that is this is a series of strung together missions. They're going from a thing to a thing to a thing. And in each one of these things, there might be an obstacle they have to overcome, a villain they have to fight, etc. But like Hugh Grant is almost inconsequential to the plot. once they're running away from him. The Red Witch, I had no idea why she was even in this movie other than to be the thing they fight at the end. Her motivations were a bit muddled, a little hard to follow, as were Hugh Grant's, and basically he just ended up being just a thief, which is fine, but it takes you 2.5 hours to fucking get there. And you're like, oh, okay. If you don't have this really charismatic group of people going on really fun missions, this movie kind of falls flat because there's no great villain obstacle for them to deal with motivating things forward. There's no like Sheriff of Nottingham to kind of draw a comparison, sort of pushing things forward and really giving the heroes something to buffer up against. So that was a major problem for me. Again, the movie is very slight. It's enjoyable. It kind of almost has to be slight, so I don't want to knock the movie for it. But there are some basic thematic... I scared Ronnie off. There are some basic thematic things that you can get from, you know, friendship and all of that. You know, the thing about being a dad and redeeming yourself as a father. Sometimes, as you know, as fathers and husbands, we can get very caught up in what our wife is doing and, you know, and wanting to bring the wife back and kind of forgetting about the kid. And that comes up in the movie, and that's all well and good. That's all there. But the movie is not much deeper than that, which is a problem for me. It probably isn't for most people. I don't think they're looking for any like heavy themes and stuff to pull out of the movie. Oh, he came back. I didn't run him off too much.
No, I hit the wrong button by accident.
Okay.
Sorry.
It was like Ronnie's like, fuck Rock and this whole stupid podcast, and like ran away. But what I was saying is, like, there are movies that have like deep, powerful meanings and they work on multiple levels. You know, you have your Banshees of Inisherin or Everything Everywhere All at Once. And then there's a movie like this one, which is a little shallow. Not the world's worst thing. And I'm not saying the movie had to be deep before Ronnie starts screaming at me, but it is an element that I wanted to point out that's not great.
Well, I have a little bit of a rebuttal.
Okay. You can give me a little bit of a rebuttal. Just a tip.
Okay. So it's fun. It's family friendly. It's a romp. It's all that. I mean, you can't really expect anything more from Dungeons and Dragons. No,
you absolutely can. You absolutely can write a deeper movie. They chose not to.
You can, but people are going to poop on it.
Maybe they don't. Really all.
Yeah, they do.
They do.
They do.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. Jason and I talked about 48 Hours last night. Go back and watch that movie. Go back and see how like deep and gritty and well made that movie is. Yeah, I'm not even sure a talent like that exists right now in Hollywood. But, like,
you're also missing the points of where it did get a little deep. It did get a little bit, it tugged at the heartstrings, and like there was a motivation for her.
No, I mentioned that. I said there's stuff there. There's grist for the mill. I just don't think it's particularly deeper than like kind of surface level. Like we're touching on this stuff because we do want our movie to be about something. We are talented people, but we're not going much deeper than that. It's like the difference between like network sitcom and like cable TV drama. Okay. It's almost like those two different. And I said it's not the world's worst thing. I'm not overly criticizing it. I'm just pointing it out that it's there.
No, I get it, and I'm not harping on you about it either. I'm just kind of like, well, I mean, there is a point where it does. I mean, there is a deep part of it, but as a D&D fan, as a longtime D&D fan, a longtime DM, I don't want it to go that deep.
Yeah, this is where you and I are going to bang heads because I'm looking at it as a film and you're looking at it as a D&D fan.
No, I'm looking at it as a film too, though.
Okay.
But I mean, I just don't want it to go that deep just yet. There's plenty of lore out there for it to go if you want to keep making movies or whatever. Otherwise, it's just a fun movie.
Okay. So just kind of move this on so I can get to Robert.
Yeah, sure.
That's the only other thing I wanted to talk about kind of when I was going through this with my kid. Nobody is particularly dynamic in their performance. Chris Pine, not that he's flat. Chris Pine's fine. Everybody's efficient. Everyone kind of had like some very specific things they were supposed to do.
Well, to that point, like Pine's the one here doing like real acting. Everyone else is just kind of there.
Well, that's my point. Like, there's nobody. Not that I needed someone to go full Marlon Wayans or anything, but nobody in that group of people was overly dynamic in any kind of way. So it's kind of like if you're looking at like a band, everyone's kind of hitting the same note, You know, it's sounding like it's kind of like multiple levels of the same note, as opposed to something I would have preferred, a little bit more jazz, a little bit more. Everyone's doing kind of a different thing, and they're all meshing well, and it looks beautiful, but no one's quite the same. Yeah, everyone's quite the same in this movie. Like the Doric character, the wizard character, like David, Justin, Steve, whatever the hell his name is.
Justice Smith.
Thank you, Justice
Sure.
Smith.
Yeah, someone managed to survive the Jurassic World movies and Detective Pikachu.
That's right. He's that kid. So yeah. Like they're hitting the same tenor in performance. You know, Chris Pine's like fine, like he's relatable as a dad, but he's also not wonderfully like dramatic or dynamic. And Michelle Rodriguez is a piece of wood that fights. She's great as a piece of wood that fights, but she doesn't do much more than that. So I was kind of lacking real dramatic performance in this. I like rangier, and this is sort of like, hey, we're doing elevator music here. We're doing elevator music because the whole building is fucking is chaotic and colorful and wild and crazy. So we can't have the music in the elevator being wild and crazy too. It's like, okay.
I kind of disagree with you on the Pine and the sorcerer Justice Smith, Simon. I thought he was fantastic.
He's fine.
I'll agree with you. I'll agree with you
a
on
beta
Doric.
Sorcerer, but that's kind of all he does.
But not till at the end. He's pretty. He's pretty badass in that last fight.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought I'll agree with you on Doric. I expected a little more out of her.
Yeah.
I don't expect much out of Michelle Rodriguez. Bless her heart. I just expect her to be Michelle Rodriguez, mildly hot and can probably smash my lungs out of my chest.
The pacing was fine. I have no real issue with the pacing. The length of the movie was fine. I don't remember it, feeling like it didn't earn its length. Again, like I said, it very much just kind of felt like here's a lot of D&D stuff for 2 hours and a fight scene, and we're done. And I wish the movie had had a little more heft to it. Those are my thoughts. Robert, what did you think?
Yeah.
All right. Let's do the positives. You said no one gives a bad performance. I agree with you. They're all kind of similar in tone and tenor, but nobody falls over their faces here. So
right.
Kudos. There's a lot of the material that's handled with respect. This could have very easily turned into a D&D thing is an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a vehicle for the message. And we don't get that. There's a bunch of times when things could have gone into very, very dumb humor, and they resisted the urge at every interval, so I thank them for that. Again, that scene with Michelle Rodriguez and Bradley Cooper, like there's some writer out there, bad writer, mind you, who looked at that scene and went, boy, the size jokes we can make. And thankfully, no one did. So they avoided a lot of the really like self-destructive or really stupid impulses that seem to pervade a lot of writing and movies these days. And so I give them credit for that. There's a good chunk of practical effects that I wanted to shout out. Most of the non-human species that they show are done practically.
Oh, they really knew how to swing a camera in this, by the way. That was one thing I forgot to mention. Like the cinematography, I think is fantastic.
I've got some issues with parts of the camera work.
Really? Okay. I thought they did some really fun stuff with the camera.
There's a few, they do a lot of like camera inversion and swinging that in places works. In places, it's really just stupidly jarring.
Okay.
So you're batting about 50-50 there. And again, sometimes cool. Sometimes, like, why are we doing this? And again, there's a few places where it seems like, hey, we can do this. Okay, but why? Shut up, we can.
Because it'll look cool, that's why.
And again, I'm not always down for that, especially if it's visually jarring. But again, a lot of the creatures they did were practical. So anytime you see a dragonborn, that's like makeup and a puppet. So credit for that. Liked some of the settings. We clearly get a lot of big, landscape shots, and hey, the world's big. The castle they use as Neverwinter Castle is actually the same castle they used for Harry Potter, the first couple of movies at least. So if that looked familiar, that's why. That was Hogwarts.
There's a handful of castles in that area that get reused time and
Yeah.
time again for sets. It's got good lighting, got wide open space for cameras and lights, and the owners are more than willing to pocket a little money to rent it.
And yeah, some of the stuff that was done in some of the interior stuff was it was not quite as done on set, but they built sets that replicated the stonework and the architecture and whatnot. So kudos for that. There's a lot of detail attention there. As far as my criticisms go, there's a few here. I agree with Mark. This is a very slight movie. There's some good messaging in general. It's shockingly pro-father, which is a thing that doesn't seem to exist in a lot of movies these days.
Yeah.
And it's
That's very, very true.
It's even rarer in D&D backstories to have a good dad.
Amen
It's
to
all
that.
the crappy father. So them being pro-father in this is like, again, it's a messaging thing I thought was kind of nice. But some of the CGI isn't great. I actually don't like their visual representation of Intellect of Hours. I thought that didn't work for me. And there's a bit too much convenience going on in certain places. Like, oh no, we're stuck on the other side of this lava flow. Well, hey, I just happen to have, hey, you have that stick. That's a magic stick. Well, what's it do? Portals. Well, isn't that convenient? Just pulled it right out of the backside there. Just,
I mean, yeah. Have you ever played a D&D campaign?
I'm very familiar with the trope of finding uses for stuff that you didn't think was useful before. Having something as stupidly overpowered as a portal gun, like, again, it's a little bit of contrived writing. Ditto the finale, actually. There's some answers to some of the questions I'm going to pose that you can headcanon your answer to, and be clear about this. But most of these are answers that could have been solved with better writing. So when Sophina triggers the Beckoning Death, or whatever it's called, I believe that was the name, it does nothing. Like, it kills a couple of people right under her when she summons it, and then no one else. It seems to just stop very, very quickly. Whereas we see in the flashback to when Zast Tam cast it, that thing expanded forever. It doesn't quite make sense. I'm also not the biggest fan of causing a stampeding riot to get out of an arena. There's just some stuff here that requires a bit too much suspension of disbelief on my end, at least. If it doesn't bother any of you out there, fair play. This is just me. The bit with Holga getting stabbed was done terribly. If you're not really, and I mean really actively paying attention to that fight scene, you don't even hear the sound effect that indicates she was stabbed. And if you're not really paying attention, then when they flash over to her and she's got a knife sticking out of her chest that appeared from nowhere, you wind up going like, what happened? I get the emotion they were going for, and I get the story they were telling there. And I'm all for that. Like, that's not a bad story. But your execution there at the end, that really, really fell down. And you did no service to anything that was going on there. I have something else. I mean, apart from Hugh Grant being terrible.
It still hasn't exploded.
I know. Look, Ronnie released the pressure. I'd have to try and build it back up, and it's not worth the effort. Here's my big criticism of this. I think, well, there's maybe two that go hand in hand here. One, the writing and this whole movie is competent, but it's not much more than that.
Yeah.
And as a result, I look at this movie and I think, Well, that was my initial reaction to it was positive, and then I started thinking about it and went, okay, wait a minute, and I then wound up asking myself, like, why did I feel so positively about this? Like, because and I found positive elements, but I settled on ultimately the following. We're so used to crap that something just being competent makes it stand out.
I think it's more.
I'm going to give you your say. Just real quick.
Sorry,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to pick. No, you're fine. I just want to piggyback on that. I don't think competent is the right word. It's accurate, but I think there's a better word. This is a very efficient movie. This isn't a movie that is overindulgent. It doesn't give into some person's like weird visions that nobody corrected. It's not full of the message. This isn't full of studio notes. This is a tight, efficient. It's something that Jason and I talk about because we've been doing a lot of older movies. Ronnie and I have talked about this. Like in the 80s and some parts of the 90s, there was some really, really great movie making. And this isn't like looking back with nostalgia. There was some real talent in Hollywood. They knew how to make a movie, but that's mostly because the studio got out of everyone's way and just let them make the movie because it was smaller budgets. They were given a lot more freedom to do things. There's a lot more collaboration as teams work together to create something that everyone could be proud of. And it was less about creating a line of product. It was just about like, let's make a movie that'll make some money for the studio and just keep those wheels turning. We're so removed from that now that when you make a movie like Dungeons and Dragons for a fairly modest budget and it's efficient, we think it's fucking, Patton. We think it's Gone with the Wind. We're like, oh my God, a well-made movie with talented people and love and care. Christ, when was the last time you saw one of those? Go ahead, Alexis.
All right, I need to make this quick because I got a lad pawing at the door to go outside. Again, piggybacking on what you guys are talking about, not just the fact that we watch a lot of crap, because Lord knows we do, especially for this show, but it's also we watch a lot of heavy-handed films. We watch a lot of stuff with very strong messages and very heavy dramas. And I mentioned this to my family members. They asked what I thought of the movie, and they are not D&D players at all. Mark, they're also the people who watch Big Bang Theory and think it's hilarious. But when I try talking about the comic book characters featured in an episode, their eyes roll to the back of their heads.
Yeah, they're just like they yell nerd at you and push you in the pool.
Yeah, exactly. I think that this, as I told, it's like this is a movie that's fun. It's not crazy heavy-handed. It's not going to make you sit and think. It doesn't leave you changed. This is a movie that it's fun. This is 2 hours in a theater that I was laughing and I was having fun with my friends. And it's very rare nowadays to get a movie like that. And I think we need more movies like that. Just having fun, just enjoying it. This is a movie that you can enjoy whether you're a big D&D fan or not. And I think that we have been sorely missing those.
Oh yeah.
Especially, in recent years.
Mark the date. Mark the date.
Yeah,
I agree with Alexis.
Right, go deal with your dog, Alexis, so that he can finish up.
All right, yes, go ahead.
I completely agree with her. We need more movies like this. Something that doesn't really have to have like. Not everything has to be Gone with the Wind or Citizen Kane.
It would be nice if studios would get back to just making like the only one that's really doing that is Universal. Universal releases a lot of like we talked about this with our year-end review for the year of our Lord 2022. Universal released a lot of movies. Not every one of them was a banger, but many of them were solid. This is a solid feature, but it's so out of the norm because everything is $250 million IP blockbuster product. Or just so incompetently made it makes your head spin. Dark feminism.
Or
or
thunder.
I don't do that when I'm drinking water.
Charlie's Angels. All right, go ahead, Robert. Wrap up.
My last point about this, and this is something of a criticism of this movie, but it's not it's a general observation more than just like boo on this film. So nobody get their panties in a twist here.
It's the panties.
I'll twist what I want.
And Mark is very happy about that, I assure you. This movie comes very, very heavily out of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Guardians of the Galaxy school of thought. And I really have personally come to... I've had more than my fill of that style of film. But that's
Can you explain what you mean in 50 words or less? And I really do mean 50 words or less.
Well, let me ask you a question about this. If I were to try and pitch this movie to you, would it be inaccurate to pitch this as fantasy Guardians of the Galaxy?
Nope.
Although it does make you wonder how many people thought of the Paladin as Drax when he mentioned the whole... So she's like, he's a son of a bitch. So you think the problem started with his mother? So seriously, it was just like, oh God, it's Drax.
You know, well, two things about that. One, we were calling him Drax the entire time we were talking about the movie at lunch. Two, boy, could that have been so much worse. And to what you were saying before, there's a lot of restraint in this movie, and thank God for it.
Yeah. So again, like just kind of as a general observation, this movie knows when people took the wrong lessons from Guardians of the Galaxy, right? We've talked about this before. They decided that more humor, this is what we need. That's not what you need. That's not what made Guardians work. The humor was nice, but it was a lot about the director's restraint with it and knowing when to just let heavy moments be heavy. This movie doesn't have anything nearly that heavy, but it also has enough restraint to not be unbearably stupid, but it's still in that same vein. It's a mostly lighthearted, comedic action adventure that happens to be set in the fantasy setting of the Forgotten Realms. Much like Guardians of the Galaxy is a mostly lighthearted, heavier than you might remember, but mostly lighthearted fantasy, action adventure, space opera. Just like Thor is a lighthearted, comedic, heavy, like I can go down the list, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just Marvel. I mean, I referenced 2 Marvel movies there, but like you can do this with what have we reviewed this year so far, Mark? Most of them fit this same tone and the same ethos of filmmaking. And it's not this movie's fault that whole style has become so unbearably played out as to be nauseating, because they do it relatively well, and I'm not holding that against the film. I am saying...
So, do you go to AMC? Like, I don't know what theater chain is near you, but I do.
Mark.
So I go to AMC, and AMC has Nicole Kidman telling us why we should come to the movies. Just as an aside.
Jimmy Kimmel made a joke about that at the Oscars. saw her in her scene. He's like, glad to see you. They finally let you out of that abandoned movie theater.
Just as an aside, can Hollywood, those of us that go to the movies don't need to be thanked every single fucking time we go. We're fine now. It's fine.
Can I seriously? Because they did that same thing at the start of this one.
Mm-hmm.
I leaned over. I went to see this with my mom, actually, and I leaned over to her and I said, Tom Cruise does that once sincerely.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can just see the firing squad behind the camera pointed at the actors like, say you're grateful, damn it.
Yeah, like, look, those of us willing to go to the theaters can go without being glad-handed and jerked off. Please stop doing this.
I don't need
for every fucking movie.
I do not need your condescension.
I kind of like the fact that Chris Pine called me a hero.
Look, Ronnie, I'm not going to sit here and stop you from getting a hand job. I don't need one.
Did you just call me Johnny?
Yes,
I might have, Steve.
Did you just get that upset over a joke?
Listen, Jonas, I don't need a hand job every time I come to the theater. That should be.
I didn't say you did.
Look, a hand job should be a special thing that happens every once in a while, not every fucking Friday.
I don't know why you have to relate everything to sex, Mark. It's a little disturbing.
What?
Have you met Mark?
No. I know he does it. I don't know why. I still don't know the why. I just know to expect it.
Okay, so Ronnie, we were talking before the podcast. If you had to put the 3 of us in D&D classes, what would you put us in? You're the expert here.
Mark,
hang on. Stop. Were you done, Robert? Just like,
yeah, I think I was pretty much done.
Back to you, Ronnie.
This is my last closing thoughts, and then we can do the bit. This is a perfectly acceptable, lighthearted, family-friendly movie. Like,
Well, hang on. You brought it up just around that point out because we kind of abandoned it because I started screaming hand job.
yeah.
And that is people come to the Nicole Kidman says it. That's why I brought this up. When she does her bit with come to the AMC movies, people why we go to the movies. We come to laugh, we come to love, we come to learn, we come to laugh. Somewhere out there, there's statistics, there's data, there's studies that show that a cross section of audiences go to do two things. Two things draw them to the movies. They go to laugh or they go to be frightened, which explains why horror movies do really, really well.
Yeah.
But I think there's a prevailing wisdom throughout Hollywood that says no matter what you're making, whether it's a drama, whether it's a horror, whether it's a comedy, whether it's a tragedy, you got to put some laughs in there or you're not going to draw an audience. And that's probably killing the movie business.
It's killing my interest in it. I can tell you that.
Well, I think it's killing a lot of creativity because, because again, you make a solid script, you make a solid movie, and then the studio going, not enough laughs in this thing. Wait, you're never going to get the normies to come see it, and then a director has to think about walking into traffic. So all right, Ronnie, tell us which Pokemon we are.
Mark is still Snorlax.
So you want?
Wait, no, he's not Snorlax. He's Jigglypuff.
No,
You're all
he's
fucking
Snorlax.
nerds. Ronnie, go.
Oh, really?
know
You're
that
gonna
much
sit up here and go and cast judgment on the nerds, huh,
You,
Mark?
I was just yelling hand job 2 minutes ago when you got into apoplexy about it. Ronnie, come on, do your
I'm
nerd
trying.
thing. Go ahead.
All right, so we definitely said you were a bard mixed with a barbarian. So you're like 10 levels of bard and 2 levels of barbarian.
That tracks.
Right.
Yeah. So Alexis, you're a freaking druid because you yell at your dog so much.
I'll take it.
You're the ranger, yeah.
Yeah.
You can just hit me with commoner. It's okay.
Oh, I figured you were a monk.
Robert, you're an NPC. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, that's evil.
That's what I said.
That's evil.
Yeah.
Like hit me with the. I'm
no,
the commoner that gets run over by the dragon.
You
It's
guys
okay.
don't know Robert the way that I do. Sexy Robert with all of his picadillos and sexual intrigue and whatnot. Oh, I've heard him on these podcasts telling the people. So you can't call him like a monk or anything like that because Robert's got soul. He does.
I've heard Robert. I've listened. Robert, you may not believe it, but I've listened to a lot of stuff you've done.
I do not believe it. In point of fact, I've seen the numbers for what I do, so I appreciate the lie.
I've heard a lot. I've actually heard a lot.
So what class is he?
You can weave a tale. But you dislike a lot of things, so I have to take that into account as well. I'm going to say that you are a bard. You are a bard, but you are a dwarven bard because dwarves are known to be curmudgeonly
And persnickety.
And that just comes with you not liking anything.
Your new name is Longbeard.
You're now Robert Rockforge. Because that's some kind of rock and some kind of forge.
Last little silly bit here before we move on to the important stuff like the money. What alignments are we?
You are chaotic stupid.
I knew you would do it.
Take it.
I knew you would do it, Ronnie, and I'm so proud of you.
Chaotic stupid.
Robert, you are. I literally believe that you are lawful good.
Fuck you.
No. It's not the law of the land, though. Robert follows his own law.
Wouldn't that be like lawful neutral?
Lawful neutral, lawful good, somewhere around the two. I do have to take his basic faith and
I know Robert's dark side.
Morality into it.
I know Robert's dark side. He's no paladin.
No, he's not a paladin. Absolutely not. But he is. I do have to take his faith and his morality into it. So he's lawful good, leaning towards neutral.
Okay.
More good than lawful.
More good. Yeah, I will say that. Alexis, you are. I don't know.
Ooh.
Chaotic evil. No, I'm kidding. You are. I'm going to say you're around the neutral good area.
I'll take it.
All right, read you mine because there is no such thing as chaotic stupid.
It's chaotic neutral.
Thank you. I'm good with chaotic neutral. All right.
We also, as a DM, we also call that chaotic stupid because people use chaotic neutral as a free ticket to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, Mark Radulich, I would like to introduce you to your new alignment, chaotic neutral, because you use that as a ticket to do anything you want. And it's usually the chaotic neutral bard that tries to seduce the dragon.
Not wrong.
That sounds like something I would do. Here's my objection to this. My one minor objection. I think I either told you or I told Andrew in private chat. On our last marriage counseling session, I was using metaphors and I was saying, I tend to be kind of a bomb, and you kind of lobby, or a bat. You swing or you throw me at things to destroy them, but I can't be the one doing it because then I'm a monster. But if the people around me need me to blow shit up, I have no problem doing that. I have no problem picking up people and throwing them out of my house. I have no problem doing what needs to be done, and I have no moral objections to being the bad guy. And the therapist goes, "You really have the wrong you really are mischaracterizing yourself." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "You have this really poor perception of yourself when you use words like bat and bomb, and these are really negative, and you're actually like a really good person. You're more like Batman." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And I was like, "You have this almost like incredulous, self-righteous sense of justice. And it's like the most important thing to you. You have a deep-seated sense of what is right and what is wrong. And you are, if by force if necessary, will hold people to what is right." It's why, like, when we have our group chats, I become the judge because, I get in the middle there and I'm like, "Nope, here's how this is going to go." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "And that's you. That's Batman. Like you are, your justice is the most important thing to you. So fuck you, Ronnie Adams. I'm chaotic good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't just do what I want. I'm out for justice, man. I'm Batman."
Okay. Do you want me to go by the okay, whatever. I was gonna say, do you want me to go by the real Mark Radulich, or do you want me to go by the podcast Mark Radulich?
Yeah,
the one that those are all kinds of horrible.
Those are two very different alignments between podcast Mark and real life Mark. Very different.
That's fair. All right. So podcast Mark is chaotic neutral.
Oh yeah.
Okay. But real life Mark is lawful good.
Sure, just keep telling yourself that.
So I completely missed everything. My whole thing cut out there. But I was saying that, I wanted to know if you want me to go by the source material Mark Radulich or real life Mark Radulich.
No, source material Mark Radulich. I was fucking chaotic evil.
Oh no, you're chaotic. No, yeah, you're right.
No,
I'm Ronnie Adams. I'm Ronnie Adams, and I have an opinion on this comic book. Why are you a fucking racist who hates women? What?
Right.
No. Source material Mark is chaotic evil. He just wants to watch the world burn.
Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
Every single one of those source materials with Ronnie turned into Deliverance. Every last one of them.
I miss movies like loosely related to everything turning into milk toast as far as wide releases go.
Yeah.
I miss movies like Deliverance.
So do I. The Deliverance, The Deer Hunter, Dog Day Afternoon.
Dude, I came across because for Christopher Walken's 80th birthday the other day.
Wow.
I came across the tweet that was like, in celebration of Christopher Walken's 80th birthday, that final game of Russian roulette from The Deer Hunter between De Niro and Walken. And I had to sit there. I haven't seen that movie in almost 20 years, I imagine.
Right.
But I just sat there and I watched. And I went, dear God, where is this now?
Nowhere. That's where. It's funny. I really am going to hit the theme after this. But Jason and I had the very similar conversation about 48 Hours because I had forgotten how, like, if you haven't seen it, Alexis, you really should. Don't watch another 48 Hours. That's a goddamn waste of time.
Uh-oh, I think somebody with Bluetooth in the car again.
Hey, don't judge me.
But 48 Hours 48 Hours goes back to an era of movie making that is so far gone and almost alien. Like, I had forgotten just like how gritty of a veneer 48 Hours has. So
isn't that the one where Eddie Murphy? I haven't seen your review, so forgive me. I'm trying to go off for 48 Hours by memory. That's Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte, right?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Yeah, where at one point Nick Nolte refers to Eddie Murphy as watermelon.
Isn't that the one with the scene where Eddie Murphy like walks into a very hick bar and just curses the place out?
I don't like white people.
Just to use
curse the people place out.
use yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, to use Mark's vernacular, he just takes his genitals out and flops them on the bar.
Yep.
Just
And Deliverance is the whole bar. All right. With that said, God, I used to use shibeta as a verb from Oz.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you've been chipetted.
Yeah, you've been shibetted. Yeah, and I'm
Poor
gonna
Carioli.
I'm gonna start doing that with Deliverance now. Alexis is just like, what the fuck are they all talking about? Alexis, go watch Oz, go watch 48 Hours, go watch Deliverance, go watch Dark Day.
I don't have enough antidepressants to watch Oz.
That's probably true.
Nobody has the money.
Maybe just take a week. Maybe just take a week off and watch The Deer Hunter then. And with that
Especially
said,
the last two seasons of Oz in particular, like they shouldn't
it's
exist.
fucking.
Did you just say take a week off and watch The Deer Hunter?
Yes,
Yes.
he did.
Yeah,
That's amazing because honestly, that's what you'll need.
I know my movies. All right. With that said, here comes the money.
We're in the money. We're in the money.
You know what I like about Tuesdays? Tuesdays is the night that my wife usually goes out and does stuff with friends. But because she does, I no longer in a big rush to get through any of this, and I can just bullshit with my friends and talk movies. I'm having fun. I like you all. I love you all. I'm having fun with you. I'm having fun with you, Alexis.
Back at you.
Aw, thank you. Well, that's what this movie does. It lets us have fun.
That's right. All right. Speaking of fun, on a budget of $150 million, this thing has made $73 million.
That's solid.
Yeah.
It's supposedly already been greenlit for a sequel.
I imagine.
As of April 3rd, 2023, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves has grossed $40 million in the U.S. and Canada, and $33 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $73 million. In the U.S. and Canada, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves was released alongside 1001 and His Only Son, and was projected to 30 to 40 million from almost 4,000 theaters in its opening weekend.
I could be wrong, but didn't we predict that John Wick was going to beat this again this last weekend?
No,
I couldn't remember if we said that this was going to take it or not.
Not in a million years, kiddo. The film made. I've been saying that this is going to be the first big hit of the year, but Mario is going to be the first $1 billion one. That's what I've been saying. The film made $15.3 million on its first day, which included $5.6 million in advanced screenings in the week leading up to its release, with $4.1 million coming from Thursday previews. It went on to debut $37.2 million, topping the box office. 61% of the opening weekend audience was male, and 63% was between 18 and 34 years old. All right, so it was the number one movie of the weekend, beating John Wick, which knocked that one from 1 to 2. His Only Son debuted at number 3, which was almost 2,000 theaters. Scream dropped from 3 to 4, which I did see, by the way. Meh.
Yeah.
That was
Creed,
pretty much what we said.
yeah. Creed dropped from 4 to 5. Shazam 2 to 6.
Ooh.
Hey,
Ow.
Robert. Hey, Robert, want to
Mark.
talk about Shazam real quick? Ooh, doggy.
You have too much fun with that board.
It's a bomb. It's a bomb. A certified bomb.
Certified disaster.
You can no longer talk about Shazam on airplanes, or you will be escorted off.
50%,
Can we still blame Dwayne Johnson for it failing?
Nope.
50% drop in its third week.
Dwayne may not have done this movie too many favors, but if you'd made a good movie, you wouldn't be having this problem.
Yeah, Dwayne would be irrelevant.
Yeah, you're right. We can start blaming him for the fact they're doing the freaking live action Moana now. But as long as we're yelling at him about something, I'm fine.
Another bomb, 65 with Adam Driver.
Oh, hey, you missed it. 1001, the George Miller movie, debuted at number 7.
I know, I said it. I thought it doesn't matter. Speaking of bombs, Ant-Man: Quantumania.
Oh,
Marvel can't fucking buy a hit at this point.
I was gonna say sorry, go ahead, Robert.
I'm trying real hard to get away from Schadenfreude as a general thing, but between Ant-Man and the Wasp bombing and the actual confirmation of reports about just how poorly Rings of Power did, like, y'all brought this on yourselves, and I'm not gonna feel bad.
Hollywood. So I've been listening to a lot of old like Metal Hammer of Doom, and a lot of Metal Hammer of Doom is me making Robert Cooper do the Bane voice. Hollywood, this is your reckoning. I'm Kill the Batman.
Your Bane is terrible.
I can't
so.
get Robert Cooper on the fucking podcast to do it himself, but
I'm pretty sure if you ask him to do that breathy of a voice, he's gonna stop breathing and keel over right in front of us.
It's actually one of my favorite things from Critical Role, believe it or not. Anytime someone casts Bane, Liam O'Brien brings his mug up to his voice and does an almost pitch perfect Tom Hardy impression. It's kind of
fantastic. Jesus Revolution fell from 8 to 10. Avatar: The Way of the Waiter, 10 to 11. Cocaine Bear.
Sad Mark.
Sad Mark. 7 to 12. Champions 9 to 13. A Good Person 12 to 14. Puss in the Boots 11 to 15. Malum debuted at 16. Everything Everywhere All at Once, the Best Picture winner, 14 to 17. The Lost King 13 to 18. The Quiet Girl from Neon Studios stayed at 19, and Ennis Men debuted at 20. Other debuts are Smoking Causes Coughing. It sure does, Ollie.
It's not a joke. Not a joke for our podcast listeners. Not a joke. The actual title of the movie that he just read off.
Yeah, Smoking Causes Coughing. People were wondering, like, why is he sick again for like the 8th week in a row? Yeah, I came back from the cruise. We threw a party. I smoked and killed myself, and I'm still fucking recovering. Yeah, I've learned my lesson. Still recovering. Invaggio, The Travels of Pope Francis, debuted at number 28. 8 Deadly Shots. Also, what I did at the bar last night. Debuted at number 44.
Another reason you're currently suffering.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when are you gonna learn to stop killing yourself, Mark?
When my life changes significantly.
When he finds life worth living.
Oh my gosh! Yo, stop it!
There's my one big laugh for the week.
And Venus was her name. Debuted at number 53. Currently worldwide, baby dolls. Here's where we stand. Ant-Man and the Wasp, while it's a bomb, it is not profitable. It is like, a black eye on Marvel, and a bad start to Phase 5. Still, the number one movie in the world at $473 million.
You can't even hit the 500 million, dude. I've said this before about Marvel. Like we talked about this a little bit last year. Like Phase 4 kind of sucked, and they couldn't repeat it. Turns out they're going in the wrong direction here. I mean, if you're Disney in general, Disney's doing some bloodletting.
Yeah.
Like we're about to do ours. And this was public knowledge. Like they said this. There's going to be 3 waves of pretty big layoffs.
Yeah.
We've had one, I believe our we might have had 2 actually.
And we said like a lot of it was in content creation. Look, people might listen to our podcast and be like, they do an awful lot of bitching and complaining, but we turned out to be right. Because we said not that long ago that Disney being a slave to Disney Plus was going to kill that studio. And how else do you interpret most of your layoffs being in content creation?
I was just trying to say earlier, if James Gunn can't deliver for them, they're about an inch away from freaking burning down Disney World for the insurance.
You're not wrong. In that same vein, again, there's some rumors coming out about what Iger's been doing now that he's back in power.
Mm-hmm.
So there again, rumor about the following. But I have no doubt about the following. By the way, that Indy 5, which is currently set to come out in July, that needs to be $1 billion movie to be profitable. Like they not only shot that thing, it's been reshot and reshot and reshot and reshot, and its current listed budget is almost $300 million, and it's probably more than that.
It's June 30th, by the way.
June 30th.
Yeah, is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Message,
Dial of Destiny,
whatever the fuck. Anyway,
Indiana Jones and product placement. But Point that needs to do 900 million north of between production and marketing and whatnot to be.
And it won't. It's going to fail miserably.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah.
Let's get back to D&D.
And we will, I promise. Well, again, the last thing about Disney, because we're talking about Ant-Man's failures.
No!
I think
Ronnie,
Ronnie's
Ronnie, this is the segment. I don't know why you're screaming.
Yeah, I was gonna say Ronnie's an inch away from just
because I'm in the
committing
chat.
suicide.
I'm in the chat and I read about Disney's failures all the time. Sorry.
Yeah,
Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing? Sorry.
For the audience. Well, again, like current rumor coming out is that Iger has put a cap on all upcoming Marvel projects.
Good.
Your budget will not exceed $175 million.
Smart.
Under no
But
circumstances.
the other thing that's got to have to change now, they got to slow down production.
That's
because,
the other thing. Again, rumor. It's going to go down to 2 shows and 3 movies a year.
Yeah, but again, part of what caused the problem with Marvel was the rapid pace of production and the inability to hire enough VFX people to make the movies look decent enough to where you had a small slave rebellion going on at Disney.
You really did. Like they almost brought out the pitchforks. Like that was close.
Yeah. All right.
So can we move on before Mark hops up his other lung?
I'm trying to. Damn it. Creed 3, 260 million is number 2. John Wick 4, 247 million. Scream 6, 148. Python 128. Shazam 120. Chevy, my fluffy friend, a girl I know at the sex house, 90 million. Cocaine Bear at number 8.
Cocaine Bear can't even beat a regional Russian film.
And Dungeons and Dragons making its debut in the top 10 at number 9. And hey, a 25-year-old movie, Titanic, is currently in the top 10. So here are all the movies not doing better than 25-year-old Titanic.
Because James Cameron just needs the money.
Magic Mike's Last Stand.
No, you got to say it right, Mark. Tragic Mike.
Okay. Demon Slayer 2, Plane, 65, Knock at the Cabin, Jesus Revolution, Missing, Asterix and Obelix, Mummies, and 80 for Brady. All right. Currently not on this list, Megan, because fuck you, France.
For those of you who may not have, if you haven't heard that joke before, Megan, technically speaking, released in France at the very end of 2022, so it falls as a 2022 movie for that reason. Everywhere else, it was January of 23. So
right, so it actually, so we can't count it for 2023, which aggravated the living shit out of me, and made for this year's running gag.
No, right. This year's running gag is now like all the movies that couldn't do better than the 25-year re-release of Titanic.
Yeah, something had to replace Morbius.
To be fair, I'm pretty sure the 25th re-release of Titanic is doing better than Morbius.
So it's Easter weekend. They moved Mario back to tomorrow. So starting tomorrow, Mario Brothers has like a 5 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's like a 5-day weekend over Easter.
So it'll be, the numbers will be a little bit inflated when we talk about them next week.
Yeah, but it's tracking to be the most successful opening of 2023 in the year of our Lord so far. The Rotten Tomato numbers came out today. The critics are not in love with it, but I think this is going to be one of those really like highly skewed ones where the critics don't love it because the critics are shitty, but the audience is going to think this is the bee's knees. This is looking like a very much like Dungeons and Dragons. Mario is looking like a very lovingly made ode to people who loved the games, and I think because of that reason alone, audiences are going to enjoy this thing. I still think that Mario is our first movie to hit $1 billion this year in the year of our Lord 2023. So, the Dungeons and Dragons had its moment in the sun, but it's over now. Mario rules all.
The plumber is coming.
That being said, I think Mario repeats because the only other thing coming out on the 14th is Renfield. And while I think Renfield will do okay, I think Mario beats it in its second week. Mario probably three-peats because the following week is Evil Dead Rise. And that's a gross horror movie That's freaking people out.
Darn right it is.
Hey, family movies always do better than horror movies, just solely on the grounds that they have a wider demographic.
Right.
I'm
So
pulling for the Evil Dead.
So I think Mario runs and then after that is Big George Foreman, which no one's going to go see except me and my kid. So
you're making me review it with you, aren't you?
It's on the schedule. Someone's reviewing it.
Yeah, it's you and Pat, unless you don't want to do it, though.
So my joke there is like, so the three of us are going to be the ones that see it.
Yeah, so before four people will see Big George Foreman, me, you guys, and my kid. So I think Mario runs the table till the end, and then Guardians of the Galaxy is the #1 movie of its weekend on May 5th. Any thoughts about that, Robert?
No, I think that's about right. Again, like I'm half pulling for Evil Dead Rise to do it in the 3rd week because I'm me, but I don't expect it to.
Ronnie, what were you going to say?
I just said the Italian me is really hating the way you say Mario.
It really is off-putting.
Mario?
Yeah!
I'm gonna when I'm done with this podcast, I'm gonna go to Taco Bell and get some chicken fajitas
And some quesadillas.
and some quesadillas.
You sure
Thanks, Peter.
you sure you grew up in New York?
Hey, forget about it, eh? All right. With that said, I think we're done here. Let's move on.
Right. You grew up in Albany, didn't you?
Fuck
That
off.
explains. There we go.
Fuck a dick.
Have you heard
Albany.
this man's accent?
No. That I deliberately shot that one because
Yeah.
Mark's from Uniondale.
Aren't
so
you from New Paltz? Go fuck yourself.
I could have said Newark.
Oh my god, it's been even worse. All right. With that said, here is the critical review.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
All right. So audiences and critics alike seem to really like this movie. It's the big hit of the year so far. We have a 91% on the critical tomato meter and 93% audience score. An infectiously good spirited comedy with a solid emotional core. Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves offers fun fantasy adventure even if you don't know your HP from your OP. Dick. Anyway.
That's actually a cute line.
Of all the stupid lines they could have made, is one of the least offensive.
That's pretty witty.
All right, Ronnie Adams of the Screaming Boy podcast. Sean Burns. I had to get one in.
Yeah, I know. That's good. I like it.
Sean Burns of North Shore Movies. A cheaper, chintzier version of this movie might have been as much fun as these actors appear to be having.
What?
Eat a dick.
I'm sorry. Is he saying that he wanted it to be more low budget or something?
He's definitely saying that the actors don't look like they're having any fun.
I thought they looked like they're having fun.
You throw a bunch of people who've never played the game in it, except for the sorcerer, Justice Smith. I think he said he played it, and they don't know what's going on. But despite all of that, they look like they're having fun with it. Except for Sophia, whatever her name is, she doesn't know where she is.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, the actress who plays Doric is the only one who I think comes across like she can't really figure out what her character is.
Yeah.
But even she wasn't terrible.
No.
Our good friend Jeffrey Harris of 401 Mania says Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves defines overachieving as a cinematic experience that performs above expectations with impressive practical visual effects, an immersive fantasy world, and charming, likable underdog characters. That's fine.
Okay, no. He touched on one of my actual complaints with this movie that I didn't get to because I thought it just didn't seem like worth touching on. But I actually do have kind of a problem with the immersiveness of the world here. And this is a problem I have. This is a problem I have with assumptions that are made about your fantasy setting in general. Because Faerun is kind of a hellscape. Like, every other month, there's a dragon attack, or the wizards invade, or the giants, or the Order of Giants goes nuts and starts trying to conquer the world. Or, like, there's always something in rapid succession trying to...
I mean, it is the Sword Coast.
Baldur's Gate falls into hell, literally.
No, only part of it.
Part of it is sucked into the first layer of hell.
Yeah, and then they walled it off, and everything was fine.
Ed Whitfield of the Outre. The Outre. Ronnie Adams of the Screaming Boy podcast.
Yeah, I hear you.
I heard a little part of your soul die, by the way.
A little bit.
We probably have Stranger Things 4 to thank for this revival.
He misspells it for the record.
Yeah.
Let's just say Strange Things.
Yep. But if it has birthday new film franchise, that's no chore if each installment is as colorful and as good natured as this one. Okay, installment is also spelled wrong, I think.
Wow, this guy's an idiot.
Yeah.
Who is this guy's editor?
Apparently everyone at the Outre is on all kinds of ill hallucinogens.
He's not 100% wrong, though. I would credit Stranger Things for not, making it as popular as it is, but definitely for increasing the awareness of it.
It definitely put it to the forefront. It shined a light on it. People have been playing forever, and but finally, when shining that flashlight on it, it made it less. It made it more acceptable for people to say, "Oh yeah, I actually play," because then you got Joe Manganiello. He has his game with Tom Morello, Paul White, Vince Vaughn. All these guys are playing it now. So
speaking of getting deliverenced, Kevin Carr, a fat guy at the movies.
Why must you threaten him with sodomy?
Or were you saying that he's threatening us?
No. Mark threatens Kevin Carr. That's how this goes.
Told with the whimsy of a group role playing on the weekend, it also delivers decent spectacle and fun characters.
Okay. It feels like he got to whimsy in his word of the day calendar and thought it vaguely applied here. I'm not trying to insult the guy. I don't think whimsy is the right word for the tone here. Is more my gripe about that. You're touching on something that's accurate, but that's not the right way to describe it.
Okay, my battery's about to die, and you're going off about him using whimsy.
Kyle Smith of
the health of your battery is not really my concern.
Kyle Smith of the Wall Street Journal, top critic. It's a blizzard of rubbish, lurching from one barely explained magical gizmo or beast to another so quickly that none of it has any impact whatsoever.
Okay. I think we just found somebody who wasn't allowed to play with the other geeks on the playground.
We touched a little bit on that. There's a degree to which he's right. He's not just talking nonsense here. But partially what's going on there is actually a loving homage to how most adventures are constructed. So he's complaining about a feature that, don't get me wrong, could have been done better, but I think he's looking at it from the wrong perspective, and that's why he winds up at a very incorrect place there.
Like I said, I see that guy as someone running off the playground going, "Mommy, they wouldn't let me play with them."
I was going to say, Alexa's probably right. They probably wasn't allowed to join a campaign and got pissed.
Yeah, neither was I. You don't see me taking it out on the movie.
Odie Henderson. Oh my God. Odie Henderson of Boston Globe, top critic. I could barely remember the logistics of the universe, mostly because they were never fluid. This is why I'm marginally not recommending the film.
Well, maybe if you actually paid attention to the movie, you weren't drunk.
No. Hang on. Again, this is one of the things that I think is a weakness of the film, elements of the world building and how things work. It's a weakness. That said, it's not as weak as he brings up. And I think that's getting a little bit lost in the forest for the trees there when you go, wait a minute. There's a degree to which you do have to kind of go along for the ride, and that's no different than any other movie.
Okay. This one's for you, Ronnie, and then we're probably going to call it a night. Kevin York of ABC News Australia. Honor Among Thieves is disappointingly straightforward in its approach to the source material.
I'm getting in the foxhole.
What the? Okay. All right.
Oh, my. Johnny Christian's cursing over here.
I didn't cuss.
You got close. Oh,
damn it.
We got so mad that he freaking disconnected.
So let me address that real fast for just a second here, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Dear Australian, because I can't remember your name, so I'm going to refer to you by your nationality. Which source material would you believe they're referencing here, my friend? And I ask you that because that's actually a very important question. If you're misremembering the setting, if you're misremembering what is the default setting for D&D, because it's been different places, it has been Greyhawk, it has been Kryn, it has been, Planescape was primarily set in Sigil. the source material, if you want to call it that, is actually somewhat of the creation of the author. This isn't adapting a specific story. It's not adapting a specific anything other than a location and a few specific IPs that you're allowed to use. The difference between D&D Fantasyland and generic Fantasyland is a handful of things that they own the copyright on. They own Beholders. They own the Underdark. They own the Mind Flayers. They own Gelatinous Cubes. They own Displacer Beasts. They don't own orcs. They don't own dragons. They don't own a lot of stuff, but there's a few things that are very specific that Wizards of the Coast does own. And the only appeal of a D&D movie versus a generic fantasy movie or television show is the novelty of seeing these things in particular represented. So if you're worried about how straightforward this is, like, I'm sorry, the point is, oh, look, I get to see these things specifically, not, oh boy, fantasy. Right. You're just wildly misunderstanding what's going on here, and it's kind of a shame.
Well, with that said, that is our review of Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. He's not here, but I'm really glad Ronnie is.
Well, let me plug for Ronnie. You can find his Twitch at Misfits and Miscreants. You can find him on his weekly podcast, the Screaming Boy Podcast. There we go. I popped Mark. That's all I wanted. Like, somebody stole his gimmick and he's mad, but he still laughed. So you can find him on that particular Twitch stream. If you want to hit him up, he mentioned that he is he's willing to professionally DM, so you can find him there, send him messages, give him money. He will be happy to take it.
All right. Yesterday, myself and Jason Teasley looked at both of the 48 Hours movies. One's really, really good. One is the same movie, but worse. On
Rocky.
On Thursday, myself and Jason are going to get together again. We're going to look at 3 recent horror movies, two of which are on PVOD. The other one's on Peacock, not a real service. We're going to look at Sick, Children of the Corn, and there's something wrong with the children.
Wait, which Children of the Corn?
Whatever the newest one is.
Oh, you poor soul.
At least the first one has, like, isn't Christopher Reeve and Linda Hamilton in that? If memory
That's
serves?
Village of the Damned.
Right.
Like, Reeve is in Village of the Damned. Linda Hamilton's in.
You're right. Hamilton is in the first Children of the Corn. That also has the actor with the condition that he's like 25 in the movie, but he looks like and sounds like a child, and he plays the leader of the cult, and he is freaking awesome.
This Saturday is normally Everyone Loves a Bad Guy Saturday, but Robert needed a quick break, so he'll be back with his re-airings on the 15th.
Yeah, give it a couple of weeks. It'll start showing up again. No one cares.
In the meantime, your Doctor Doom stuff's doing really good again.
It's really not.
So this Saturday, instead, we'll have a re-airing of one of our alternative commentaries. This one is Virgil Ortiz Jr. versus Brad Solomon. That was aired on DAZN, which rhymes with calzone. Over under on the Blog Talk Radio Metal Hammer of Doom in the year of our Lord 2014. We are at the stage where I went on the Jonas Exodus. My son's about to be born. So I gave the studio over to Robert Winfree and Robert Cooper and Jesse, and everyone kind of pitched in and kept the wheels going. So over on the Metal Hammer of Doom, Robert Cooper had a whole bunch of guest hosts on, and he kicked things off with Sean Comer, and they did a Nightwish retrospective, which was wildly popular in its day. So give that a listen. And then
Nightwish has a fan base, man.
Monday the 10th, we are hanging in the Treme where people sashay. Season 2, Jesse and I will be looking at that as we go from the corner to the deuce. And then we're back here on Damn You Hollywood. It'll be myself, Alexis, and Zach Strobel. Good boy, good to his mother, Zach Strobel. Will be back with us to talk the Super Mario Brothers movie.
It still hurts.
I'm done talking now. Alexis Hannah, show us where you pissed from.
All right. So, yes, I will be back to talk about the Super Mario Brothers movie. The week after that, I will be returning with good company. Dorian Price will be joining us to discuss Renfield. And then the week after that, Robert, I'm actually handing Dorian off to you because you guys are going to discuss Evil Dead Rises, which I am sitting out for. Other than that,
I will have to. Okay, I wasn't aware I was hosting that, but all right.
I'm going to be on that show.
Oh, you're on that show. Okay. I thought you were. I wasn't sure, so don't worry.
Nope, haven't. So look, at this point, I really don't want it. I really don't want to be, but because I'm tired of you people fucking bullying me, I will be on that show. I'm going to man up. I'm going to be naked in that theater, and I'm going to watch that damn movie.
I just want to point this out, Mark. Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, you allege that we've bullied you.
Yeah.
I disagree with that.
You can disagree all you want. It's the truth.
Here's what we've done. We've pointed out a flaw in you, and you have elected of your own volition to address that flaw. You are becoming a braver person, Mark.
Okay. I like your positive spin.
Look, if we were bullying you, we'd be annoyed that you were trying to work on this.
Okay.
I'm happy for you, Mark. I'm glad that you're getting over that. Like, gross out horror may never be your thing, but you're not a squeamish. You're addressing this part of you, and I'm proud of you. Well,
I warned the Kelsey that I'm going to end up watching this movie in her lap. So she was like, yeah, that's fine.
You know, if I made that if I put that same sentence together, you know what you'd say.
Go ahead, Alexis.
All right. For the record, Mark, are you okay with Mr. Dorian Price stepping in for Evil Dead Rises without me?
That's perfectly fine.
Okay, that's what I thought. He wanted to join in. Okay, so we are actually looking at no TV party tonight's coming up here in the near future. Just not a lot coming out right now on TV. Although we did just see that we are getting on Disney Plus. We're getting a new look at the Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. They're getting their own series, 10 episodes, all debuting on Disney Plus.
Are they doing that in the style of Spinal Tap?
I have absolutely no idea,
right,
but Zachary and I will be reviewing it.
I might be on that one when with you then.
That
sounds
had
amazing.
A feeling you would. We'll take a look at the schedule later.
Yeah.
Hey,
when are you doing The Mandalorian?
Huh?
When are you doing The Mandalorian?
Oh, I need to double check on when the final episode is. I know I sent some dates off in the chat. I do not, or that was a while ago, and I do not remember what we discussed.
Okay.
I'll take another look.
Season 3, it stinks.
Moving on.
Tell me I'm wrong.
All right.
It doesn't stink.
All right, so she has to now talk about like what pays her bills and shit.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, Honeysuckle Rose Creations, where fashion meets fandom at the intersection of geek and chic. We're taking a month off from the convention scene. We are working on our wholesale, heading out to Level 1 in the River Market of Kansas City, Mind Games and Magic in Lee Summit, working with a couple of other shops, hopefully going to have our stock out there. At the beginning of May, we will be heading to Indiana Comic Con. It's our first time working that. We've worked the Indie Pop Con a couple of times, but this is a new convention that we've never done. Really excited about it. And fingers crossed, knock on wood, please God, don't jinx me. We may have just locked in our table for NakaCon here in Kansas City, Kansas. We were on the wait list for that. I saw that they had an opening. I threw my name in. I'm hoping I get it. Please cross every digit and appendage you have, folks.
I will be hoping that the tornado system does not hit Kansas City.
We've actually gone without tornadoes for the last 2 years. It's been very surreal.
Dude, Mark, you may not be aware, but like Arkansas and Kentucky got hammered last week.
Well, I think they were talking about like
Iowa got it.
Yeah.
Climate change, such as it is right now, has affected weather patterns where places that don't normally get hit by things get hit by things.
Those places have been hit by tornadoes before.
Robert Winfree, show us where you pissed from.
You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. That's Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic.
So, if I may, for just one moment, indulge my personal maudlin nature. With regard to things I have done recently. So last week, in preparation for the big WrestleMania event, I released a thing. And it was all about the story leading up to Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns in the main event and why I thought Cody was going to win, why he should win. And then Vince McMahon came back. And that thing is still up. I'm not taking it down. But all of a sudden, it feels very different when I think about everything I said. Like, boy, what a waste of time that was.
It was a good thing you did. It was,
sure.
that you reached the natural conclusion that Luke Skywalker should blow up the Death Star, and Vince said, "But what if he doesn't? What if the Empire wins? What if we wait? What if we wait another 2 movies for the Rebels to win?" Is not your fault.
Well, and it only got worse on Monday with Raw
After Triple
yesterday.
H read his hostage letter at the press conference.
Mark, I know you don't watch wrestling on a weekly basis, and I haven't watched Raw unless I've been covering it in months.
Mm-hmm.
Longer than that. Like I read I read recaps. I have other stuff that happens Monday evenings generally. I don't care enough to watch it. I haven't enjoyed it enough to watch 3 hours worth of that, but it's the Raw after Mania, and I wanted to see, like, okay, you've made a dumb decision here. A very dumb decision. But my morbid curiosity compels me to at least see, why did you do that and what did you think was a good decision? Like, what inspired this? And it turns out that particular episode of Raw featured less than 30 minutes of wrestling in your 3-hour broadcast.
Ugh.
Your commercial-free first hour, whole first hour commercial-free, featured a promo segment that you kind of expected, and then a squash match, and then more talking. And it turns out that what they thought they needed to do here was not have Cody Rhodes beat Roman Reigns. It was to have Cody Rhodes lose, and then to have Brock Lesnar beat the crap out of him to close the show.
Yeah, I saw.
And this just validates why I don't watch Raw. And it has given me a deep, deep sense of dread about Friday.
All right,
But-
come on, wrap up, man. I gotta get going.
But so anyway, I did that thing. So if you want to listen to me be slightly optimistic about stories reaching their natural conclusions in the world of professional wrestling, give that a listen. As for my other stuff, I cover professional wrestling a few nights a week. AEW's Dark Elevation on Monday, WWE SmackDown on Friday, and I'm usually on deck for other stuff. I occasionally will pinch hit for AEW's Dynamite. I've done Raw on occasion. So anything in the wrestling realm that occasionally needs help, I'm there to do that. Oh, last week I did NXT's Stand and Deliver event. So you can read my thoughts on that if you're so inclined. No one watches NXT. It's okay. And then there was no MMA event last Saturday. However, this coming Saturday is UFC 287, which will be taking place in the Miami-Dade Arena in Miami, Florida. So that'll be fun. It's a pretty good card. If you want my full preview of that, you can listen to me preview it on the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast, where I also talk a little bit about. They recorded that Sunday. Technically, it was Monday morning. I was so blitzed. I was tired, man. I just had to finish. I had something else come up, and I had to get the podcast recorded at least before I went to bed. So I did that at like 2 a.m. It was fun. But I talked a little bit about what was then just news about the potential merger of UFC and WWE under the Endeavor umbrella, which has become true. It's not official yet, but that's what they're doing. Like, there's still the legal matters to be worked out. But coming your way later this year, UFC and WWE will be merged under the ownership of one parent company that used to be Endeavor. So, yeah. No good will come of this. Just no good. So you can find me over there talking about that. This week, again, I also have UFC 287 on Saturday and Sunday evening / Monday morning. The 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast will go live this week. This coming one will be a review of 287, preview of UFC on ESPN 45. I forget the number, but it's headlined by Arnold Allen and Max Holloway. So thumbs up on that match.
All right.
So tune in for that. Otherwise, back here next week for the Super Mario Brothers movie, because I can say Mario without deliberately offending people.
All right. Yep. Tune in next week for Damn You Hollywood's review of the Super Mario Brothers movies.
Do it again. Do it again. Do it
Mario.
again. Come on. Like a cat.
Mario.
No. Like a cat.
Mario.
There you go.
All right. For Alexis Hana, for Robert Winfree, and for Ronnie Adams, who's gone back to his home planet.
He's come back to the woods to live deliberately.
This has been Damn You Hollywood. Be well, be safe, and behave.